Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 7th Community Preservation Committee. This meeting is being conducted live and by remote participation pursuant to the executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law signed by Governor Baker, taking effect March 12, 2020, and subsequently extended through March 31st, 2025 under Governor Healy. This, as I said, meeting is being held online and in person. You can go to meet.google.com/IDWJBXIKCC or join us in the room. With that said, I would call this meeting to order and ask for a motion to open.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Because we are hybrid tonight, we'll be doing everything by roll call. So John Morton?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
John Linehan?
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Chairman's report, just a couple of quick updates for everybody. Last night, the select board closed the warrant and they inserted all of the CPC articles brought to them. We are going to talk a little bit about the motions tonight. Barry has worked very hard on. I believe, are we going to have a budget motion tonight or?
I believe so.
Okay, you have the numbers together?
I do. I'm not convinced of what the board has
Okay.
at this point, but
Yep.
I think they're close enough, and I think my motion will be relative to the idea that whatever differences there are, we can work out between now and town meeting for sure.
Okay, excellent. So given that all of our articles were inserted into the warrant, the public hearings will be starting in late February, early March, and will extend, I think, to mid-March, at least for our purposes. I will be available to present the articles at the various standing committees. However, I thought it would be good for this committee to know and understand that I am retiring from politics in April. So I will no longer, because I'm tied directly through the SRA to this committee, and as much as I will miss this, I will be off the CPC as of April 2nd.
Wow.
And at least for now, I won't be returning, but I need some time. It's time to spend some time with my family and focus on our future, and what that means and where that is. So I think the committee needed to be aware of that, because moving forward, you'll have some things you'll need to deal with. I will not be able to represent the CPC at town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, let me
Yes.
also say that I'm not going to be seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission. Therefore, I will not be a member of this committee
Oh,
after probably June.
that's, I mean, I'm glad for you, but I'm sad to see you go. I learned a great deal from you and the way you presented yourself and handled yourself publicly, so thank you for your service.
Feeling is neutral.
Yeah, thank you, John.
And thank both of you
Speak on
too.
behalf of everybody, I think you will both be missed greatly.
Well, I'm gonna miss it, I'll be honest, but it is time and it's okay. You know, it's, sometimes you have to take a new turn in life. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that. I'm gonna turn it over to Barry for administrator reports.
Okay, well, thank you, and if I could just take a moment of personal privilege to thank both John and Mark for their service to this committee. Really hard to put in words. I'm sure that you'll both be greatly missed. I'm sure I will miss both of you tremendously.
Thank you.
John,
Thank
how
you,
long has
Ben.
it been on conservation now?
Many moons.
I cannot imagine, it's gotta be 30?
I said, John F. Kennedy was shot and the world kept spinning. I said, nobody's indispensable, nobody.
Nobody.
But you weren't on the commission when John F. Kennedy was shot, right? That's what I thought you were gonna say.
Wow.
60 years.
Anything else, Barry? Administrator's report?
Yeah, just briefly, I think this is gonna, it's something later on the agenda. I was just gonna briefly mention that Mark and I and, trying to remember who else was there, Jerry McDonald have been working with town council, putting together CRs, conservation restrictions. There's one that needs to be done for Glen Echo for the active recreation area, and there's one that needs to be done for the,
Atkinson.
for Atkinson Ave, the new parcels that the town just acquired.
And we're actually pretty close to a final product on both of those. Atkinson was a little easier. Glen Echo has a little bit of work to do yet, but we'll hope to be able to present that to you in the next month or so.
Right, we've got another meeting next week with.
Yeah.
There's no active at Atkinson Avenue, is there? Or,
No, it's passive strictly, which was why it was a little cleaner. And there'll be some work for the committee to do to find somebody to carry that open, or I'm sorry, active recreation restriction, because it's a little more difficult than the passive one. So Barry is well aware and has already been working to seek somebody that will carry that for us. And then shortly after, and this will be further along too, but the Benson Road property will need a conservation restriction. So we hope that we'll be able to tie all those loose ends up before the election.
well, right now, I'll just say, it's very daunting to think of us going ahead and doing that sort of thing without you taking the very active role that you have for the last several years, so.
Well, I have a great passion for this, and I thank you for that, Dwight. I'm gonna miss it, but it is time, so. Michael, treasurer's report, was that it, Barry? I'm sorry.
That's it for me.
Okay. Michael, treasurer's report, do you want me to put it up on the screen for you?
Yes, please. I get distracted, so I try to drive.
Yep, be patient with me. Let's see.
And as I said in the note, this only went out a couple hours ago, if that. But I can tell you, I have been working a lot on this. There are some issues with some of the things that we alluded to at the last meeting with the CP2. And unfortunately, Mary Jane, who's been very helpful, is also extremely busy trying to cover for Bill Rowe and hasn't been able to give me time this week. We were gonna try to go over. I was really trying to hold off to get a final view of what they thought they would be putting in. So if we can skip to the next page, which is the usual agenda, we're gonna take a quick look at the CP2 community preservation and revenues for fiscal year '23, as well as the expenditures. A quick update of '23 and '24 year-to-date spending on projects in progress. We're gonna go through the debt schedule, and I've got it listed 3 ways, and we've seen it before, and there's very little change. Actually, page 6, the debt schedule is the same as what we looked at back in November, because we haven't done any new debt since then. The debt service by year and category, I included them because they changed slightly, but they changed to reflect the actual debt that was paid at the end of 2023. So
Right.
we don't need to spend a lot of time there. And then I've got the budget broken down into 2 sections. It's the same format that we've used since day one with the budget that Bill Rowe always put together, just kinda, I'll say, cleaned up and split out in a way that makes it hopefully a little bit easier to follow. So if
Okay.
we can skip to the CP2. Okay, fiscal '23, we had a significant increase in income over fiscal '22. And I show here '21, '22, and '23. The proceeds from bonds and OFS varies year to year depending on what bonds we're doing, which is the bulk of that. We had a couple of bonds that we did at the end of 2023, which is most of the 300,000. The lines that are highlighted with the answers, the collections from the CPA surcharge jumped from 888,000 to $1,080,000. $192,000 increase. We have never seen that kind of an
No,
increase in the whole
we
history
haven't.
of what we've been
Is
doing.
that because of new building and stuff?
You'd think it wouldn't be
No,
happening,
but-
you'd think that's counterintuitive to me, given my sense of sales and transactions, but
I have asked the town, but as I said, Mary Jane, who was trying like hell to be helpful, just especially the last 2 weeks, I did meet with her in January and
Dwight,
got
I
some
don't
of this
think that's from
information.
okay, this is from the town, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. thanks.
These are, these
Yeah,
are our
all right.
local
This is
revenues.
what we're
for-
getting from
Yeah.
ourselves.
It's not the state.
Right, what's a percent of our tax bill?
The increase, is that a result of the increased value of the real estate in town
We don't know.
and the contribution
It
from
went
the
up
state?
20%. My real
21,
estate taxes,
22.
I don't think went up 22%.
No.
And I would expect this to go up in line with all of our, I mean, there's limits as to how much it can go up. If it's a result of
2.5%.
new building and stuff,
Yeah.
then I would think the town would be in much better financial shape than what I'm hearing.
It's,
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, if I,
more to be done. At the end of the day, we have seen increases of over 10% if we went back year by year. And what tends to happen, I don't know if it gets mixed between years, that sometimes you'll get an extraordinarily big jump, not 20, but in the 10s or 12s, and then the next year it drops down to like a 2%. So I don't know if something's happening that way. At the end of the day, it affects the budget, because the budget is based off of that one, off of the $1,080,000. But all it would mean, worst case, is that we over budget next year, and instead of coming in 5% over budget, we may come in right on budget. It doesn't really change.
The other number that jumps out is 200,000 on earnings on investment, up from 7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
that doesn't make sense either.
That is exactly why it's highlighted.
Yeah,
Again, I think we had one other year where we got a jump over the $7,000, $10,000, $18,000, but we've never seen 200.
Let me just-
So those are two open items that, they were really what I was trying to resolve with the town, so that we could start off from a good point. But
So
at the end of the day, I mean, on one hand, it's good news, it's, we got more money than we thought we were
Maybe.
gonna have. On the other hand, we wanna make sure it's right.
So my only concern with this is that if these numbers are erroneous, not by any fault of your own, but if a mistake was made somewhere when these numbers were put together, from the town's perspective, and we vote this budget tonight ultimately, I may ask to call a brief one-item meeting to ratify the new budget, if those
Yeah.
numbers are way off.
No, that
But
would be fair. eh?
yeah, and let's play it by ear a little bit.
Mary Jane has already talked to the new town director of finance, who starts next week,
Yeah,
and said that I've
Explained
been
what
pushing her
concern.
for stuff, and some of it, she's struggling to answer, because quite honestly, she didn't do the CP2, they had a consultant doing it. So again, I'm not sure they're wrong, but I wanna make damn sure they're right.
Is Bill Rowe doing any consulting?
Bill has
No.
actually been helping a little bit, so yeah.
Yeah, but he's not a
I guess
consultant, to my knowledge. He's
He,
doing it out of kind of his
well,
heart.
maybe,
Yeah.
Mary Jane said he is doing that type of consultant for other towns. I don't know if that's the role he's playing here, or if
Right.
he was just doing it as a friend to Mary Jane.
I don't
think
either.
that's the question.
It
That
should
would be my only concern, would be,
Absolutely, that is,
It should be a percent of the real estate income that came into the town, right? With two different categories, exclusions for the
Essentially.
older
we're a
people.
1.5% line item.
yes and no.
After
it's 100,000
100,000.
exemptions.
Yeah.
Right,
And
right.
abatements
Yeah.
and stuff like that, we'll all throw that off a little bit, but essentially, yeah, I would think it should track.
I would think it
real
should be,
estate tax.
it should be something less than 1.5% of the
Oh, for
total
sure.
receipts for the town
But,
because of
but
the
I think with
exemption.
this.
Yeah, because of the
It
$100,000.
should mirror, exactly.
Right,
Yeah,
So more work to be done.
yeah,
But again, at the end of the day, the way we budget, we begin with this $1,080,000, and we budget the local surcharge for 2025 as 95% of the 2023 number. So,
this is 21% difference, though. I mean, that could throw us.
that's why it's up here like, that's
Yeah.
why this took so
Yeah.
long to get here, and it's why it's up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It
And I
doesn't
don't
end
wanna,
here, the work will continue.
right, and I don't wanna make a huge deal of this, but just, I think as a committee, we should be aware that, in the event-
We are on top of it, and
Yeah.
we will get the answer.
and I will say, Michael, you've worked very hard to try and get us the answers tonight. And I understand you couldn't, but Michael did put in an awful lot of effort to get us the correct information tonight.
As John said, the earnings from investment just stole the next piece of thunder, but that's okay. So big
Yep.
increase, that's that. Let's
Yep.
go to the next point, and look at the
Yep.
expenditures and
Sure.
debt service. And,
Can I just ask a question?
yes.
What are we invested in?
Well, our millions of dollars in our funds gets invested in short-term type stuff, and for years,
So
we
it doesn't
haven't.
just get stuck in a bank account?
No, they can invest it. There are certain guidelines. We did the same thing with the SRA funds, and
Although the SRA has a little more latitude,
Little more
what we're
latitude, a
doing
little bit.
here is so conservative.
Yeah.
It's conservatively invested so we don't lose
now,
funds.
one of the
But it's all-
reasons.
But
one-
that's not something that's changed, how it's invested.
I would not expect that to change. That's just the way the town invests, and when the town invests in some of that money as us, they have to give us the interest on it now.
And
true.
if I may, although I don't see this kind of a jump, I know a lot of entities like us have gone to T-bonds because T-bonds really went up this year. They were super safe. We're almost at 6%. The SRA actually bought a few just so, we could recover from some of the hits we were taking on the market. And as you know, the SRA is very conservatively invested. So if we're taking hits there, T-bonds were a safe bet. Now they've dropped a little. They're about 5.5.
One of the outcomes here is I think at a future meeting, we probably should invite the town treasurer. and
Yeah, so we can
that
talk
process
about
and-
how that's done. I agree.
One piece of that increase is probably because for years, they were getting a tenth, a quarter, or a half a percentage of interest. And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you're getting 4%.
Yep.
Well, that's a big difference.
If they
But
went to
is it
T-bonds,
enough
you
to
could be
explain
looking
this?
at
That's
almost
what we
6.
need to know.
Yeah.
The other thing I would point out is that for income in '21, you showed $800,000 received as proceeds on bonds. That 800,000 went out almost when it came in, because it was used to pay for Glen Echo.
Yeah, I've always thought, it's a little odd that they put it in as a revenue, but it's cash coming in. Think of it as a cash flow statement. It's cash that came in
Yeah.
and it gets spent.
And what went out was $79,000, which was the amortization of the bond. In other words, we got 800,000, which we gave to the seller, but we paid out 79,000 or whatever it is for debt amortization.
But in fairness, we haven't
spent
bonded
all that
anything in
money,
recent
and then
memory.
We've spent all the money, like a construction loan, and then got it back from the bank.
Yeah,
So they've taken it out of the CPA reserves,
Yes,
and then the 800,000 comes back in and replenishes the reserves.
right. But from a point of view of cash to us, we didn't get and keep $800,000. We got.
Well, we did, because we had already probably
paid it
spent
out.
the 800,000.
yeah.
We'll see that, when we look at the debt schedule, we can look and we'll see exactly what the bonds were that made up that 800,000.
And if you remember, we had a bond come in one year, 3-4 years ago for the high school that artificially inflated our number by almost $1 million. Of course, that immediately came out to pay the debt for the bond. But it did look that way. So that was something I was wondering but we haven't bonded anything lately. So,
Well, we bonded $800,000 in fiscal '21. We'll see that on the bond schedule, we'll point that out.
Right,
You'll be
yeah.
able to see exactly what it was for.
I know that, but it a little bit different than what happened at the high school.
No, but you're right, it
Yeah.
hasn't been for a couple of years, so it
No.
just takes time to get
We
the
may have
bonds.
approved that bond in
Right.
2014.
Sure.
Right,
Yeah, that's
right.
But
not
the
a,
bond came in cash in 28, that's all that's telling us,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
all right.
in 2021. We'll see.
Expenditures and debt service.
When we first got the CP2, which the town had problems doing it, they put it in December, we were struggling with the numbers.
Mhm.
And we finally got the backup, and that's what I sat down with Mary Jane and got them to rerun some reports out of units for us. They had the right total expenditures, the 172,609. In fact, they had the right breakdown, 23,237 and 149,372, but they had them posted to the wrong categories. I assume it's a clerical error. I don't. So what we've got here is the right breakdown, and I notified
This
the
is
town.
correct.
This is correct, yeah. I want our numbers to be correct.
Yeah.
And we'll see exactly what those projects are, because it's on another slide.
How do we, I'm sorry, Michael, how is it gonna get fixed on the CP2?
We don't know yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I suppose there may be a format to submit an
Well-
amended one.
I don't know that there is.
I don't know.
Mary Jane has addressed that with the new finance director, that we have to look at that.
Yep.
And I say that because in the reconciliation I did in 2021 for all of our projects, there were 3 things reported incorrect. They may not have been incorrect. Actually, back in 2016, we reported as an actual expenditure the $20,000 payment to South Shore Habitat for Humanity for a project.
Which we
Never
didn't
went
do.
ahead.
We had it, it was incumbent back at that time,
But
but
never spent.
eventually we rescinded it.
Yeah.
never been adjusted in the CP2. I don't know whether that was an oversight or whether there just isn't a mechanism, because the CP2 only reports the current year.
Right.
And then they move on.
Right.
If the CP2 included a cumulative total, then they would have to make those corrections. But we'll get that answer now, because it's just, we're gonna have to fix it, and at the same time, we'll see if we can fix the others.
Okay.
Likewise, on the expenditure for debt service, they reported the correct total of 386, 309, 83, but they plugged it all into the recreation, other expenditures recreation. I went through all the, it was a nightmare going through the entries, but they all actually tied back to the budget to get it into the right categories, with the exception of the short-term debt of 15,154. There were 2 payments, I don't know, and that's, I've asked them to help me break that out so I can put it back.
And
into
those,
the right
that
categories.
15,154 was short-term payments?
I assume that's the short term. The long term is set, and I mean, I could tie it back to the budget.
Okay.
I wish it was a one-for-one on the payment, but they pay some of them together and whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that piece, the 15, which we were expecting $16,000 in short-term debt. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the short-term piece. I will get it broken out, but for now, I'm giving it to you the best we can by category.
Okay.
Administrative expenses were $30,000. So the other big, the fund balance climbed from 6.5 million to 7.9 million. I didn't include here because I didn't want to make it even noisier, but if you recall back in November, we talked about and done a projection. My projection was like 7.72.
Yeah, not
We're
bad. Mike.
$150,000 over, which is a result of the 2 lines we just talked about.
And I'm, yeah, right.
So, just as a.
But the point is, you were pretty much spot on, which
Yeah,
is,
individually, they were all over the place, but we kinda got to the right spot
Right.
for the decisions we needed to make.
yeah. Next
slide.
page.
Here are the projects in progress, and this is essentially the same slide that we looked at, with the exception of the last 2 columns. I've broken out the 23 expenditures and the 24 expenditures on projects, excluding the debt service. And what you'll see, there's only 4 projects that we actually spent money on in 2023. We kind of alluded to that there didn't seem to be a lot of activity from a financial sense. And in the first 6 months of 2024, if you flip down the page a little further, we've only spent about
152. Yeah.
and then we've only spent 152 year to date. And remember, last June, we approved $2.3 million.
I know we did.
And we know there's a lot of work going on. Barry's got some reports, and I've seen, and some of that you expect is gonna take time, but I'm just a little surprised at how slow the spending is going. 24 projects,
I'm
not
a
even
little-
counting the 7 we got in front of us for this year.
Yeah,
And we're not spending a lot of money.
but I'm showing $1,800 being spent on the acquisition of Benson Road, and my understanding was it's done. The sale has been completed, am I
No,
correct?
No.
No, you are not.
Okay, thank you for that. Maybe we could, well, that's on our
That
schedule, so
1,800
we'll get
was
a,
as of January 2nd, but.
okay.
So it could have happened if it did, but if John's saying it didn't,
No,
may not have
and
gone
we,
through,
it's a
yeah.
line item tonight, so we'll get to that, but thank you for that, John. And go ahead, Mike.
So that was the only, 4 projects, and there's really only 6 out of the 24 that have any spending through the beginning of January this year, so.
Right. I just noticed that the fire engine they must be working on it, because they've already spent $85,800 since June 30th.
It's been
Yeah, actually,
105.
Joe showed me some pictures of it, it's really coming along nice, the fire.
Are we combining 23 and 24
No,
numbers?
23 is the second last column, and 24. 23 is the 172.
Does,
So
The-
24 is from July 1st,
Right.
23 through.
so we've
January
actually
2nd.
spent 105,855 on the, am I correct in that?
On the fire engine.
On the fire engine,
Yes.
yeah, because we spent 20 the year before, so now we're at 105.
Yeah, and actually, I
Yeah.
didn't include a cumulative. There may have been money, although I think the 20 might have been the first payment.
Okay,
I did take off. the
so he's better than
just so that we-
halfway through the dollars at least.
Yeah, and I think he's in great, he showed some pictures the other night when we were at
Good.
the town hall. He had some pictures ready, so. And we're gonna be adding 7 more projects here, hopefully, come town meeting.
Hopefully,
so.
yes, one quite a
One of
large
the things
one.
that's made me think that we probably ought to focus on with the projects as we approve them is asking the people to really help give us a timeline of when they think things are gonna happen. And that's gonna be a point of discussion on the budget as well, because of the timing of some of the money for next year. In any case,
We have some safeguards in place, you know, we carry that 3-year limit, that sunset, if you will. But I agree, it's been very difficult to get forward movement on some of these projects, and I suspect it's a lot of red tape on the municipal side on many of them, but,
But in terms of the way we plan out, and we were very concerned in November and December
Sure.
about our cash position
Yeah.
and our ability to bond and stuff.
yeah.
Given the slowness of how these payments are going.
I know, but once we
need to
encumber
focus
it,
also that
you know,
money is somewhat encumbered, it's just a better understanding of it.
yeah, I'd like to see the money get spent quicker, obviously, but,
Yeah, and maybe we can close out, if you go back to the top of the page, a couple of the projects are 2015.
Glen Echo
Well, the Glen Echo we
acquisition.
know, but maybe a couple others are getting closer, I mean, well, the recreation facilities we know.
Well, the security and rehab, I thought didn't we rescind that money
Yeah, Cape and Reynolds.
at Cape and Reynolds?
No,
Did we,
No, I don't remember that, but.
We have one more expenditure on Cape, on Gun Echo that should be, we have to reserve for, and that is the recreational
Yeah.
easement.
yeah,
right, and that will come out of the first
Is
line.
that down here somewhere?
well, the top line,
It's a top
that's
line.
coming off the top line, the 01503 project, the Glen Echo acquisition. So there's no spending yet in 23 or 24, but we know there's still one piece.
Yeah, it was the CR and the easement, right?
That is the easement.
Well, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't know what the cost of that will be yet, but we know it won't be $85,000. Well, we hope it won't.
But we'll look at it, I mean, a couple of these we may be able to look at closing out soon.
Well, that one we'll be able to close once we get the CR in place, and that'll be that. I don't know about the farmhouse security. I don't know about the recreational facilities, but we're sort of getting closer on all of those, so.
Actually, on the Cape and Farm improvements, just under $10,000 has been spent for the storm windows, which are in the building and ready to be installed in the spring. So that number doesn't reflect there. As far as the painting of the building, we get delayed because the Norfolk County Sheriff's Department suddenly said, we don't have personnel to do the painting as we used to.
Yeah, I remember
We've
this.
done it twice. So we're gonna have to pay for that in the spring, or get volunteers to do it.
So, and I know that this one's been sitting out there for 9 years now, but we didn't have that sunset policy
I
in
know.
place at the time, so there's no,
I was glad to see that we put one in place, but
Yeah.
we still have some 2020s and.
so it sounds like that project will move forward
It
and
will.
get, yeah.
We kept waiting for Norfolk County to get that done. We were gonna buy the paint materials and they were gonna provide the labor. And every year they said, we're gonna be there, and every year they said, no, we don't have the
We don't have the
personnel, we don't
personnel.
have the capabilities, et cetera, and I finally gave up. And I tried every avenue possible last year. I went through McCrisky, who has a pretty tight connection to Norfolk County, and David,
Sheehan,
yes.
Yeah.
Who works there, and to no avail. So either we spend the money to get painted, I did get an estimate about 28,000, which was more than we have left over. So I think some volunteers will do the bulk of the work on the painting.
and we can, I think, Barry, you should probably go through this and seek any updates that we haven't had regular updates
If there's any
on.
opportunity,
Yeah.
I'd love to shorten this list before we add several
Yeah,
more projects.
me
because
too.
It's tough to follow.
I have a question about the fire station rehab.
Yeah, me too.
I thought people were gonna be dying if we didn't do that instantly.
Yeah,
Here
Okay.
it is 2 years and we haven't spent.
I think they've spent all the money they're going to spend on that. They did, my understanding was
Go
take
back
care
down
of
low.
some of it.
Go back to the bottom. The Stoughton Depot stabilization that they needed $200,000 for in very urgent last
I know.
spring, they haven't spent a dime.
So,
They
we
spent
had to
so
do an
little money.
emergency,
But they did,
well,
how,
you remember
when
they
they
came
spent
to
to
us
get
as
the
an
electricity
emergency.
in and the
Yeah.
heat, that, have we seen
The
that bill?
electricity was already in.
What-
We
The
did not pay
electricity
for the
had been hooked up
electricity.
Before they came to us.
Yeah.
The heat, and they were able to fix the heat, basically just toying around with it.
Yep.
It may not be a permanent fix, but my point, I don't think they've addressed the more permanent types of things that we were hoping to get out of $200,000.
The one thing I
And I don't think
must,
that urgency. but
well, and
a
that's
lot of
something
these
for this
projects-
committee to consider in the future. is it in fact an emergency?
A
I
lot of these
mean,
projects have come into us as emergencies, we gotta do them last minute, cause the deadline, and then months go by and we haven't spent money.
So one-
That's actually why I
What we
put it
might
this
do
way.
is put a time limit within which the money must be spent.
put a ticking time clock on it.
Say, you know, this is.
You get 3 months. If this is an emergency, you get 3 months. The struggle with that, and I talked to Bill Rowe a little bit about this, because the first phase of the money we gave for the depot, I wasn't seeing it as spent. And Bill explained to me, well, we spend in deficit, so it doesn't actually come out of your account until maybe 18 months after the money has been spent. And I'm like,
That's possible.
yeah, so it is very confusing to me, and I'm not a numbers guy, but Bill sort of explained it away as, no, the work's being done, it just hasn't been billed through yet.
Right, and in terms of the time to complete the
Yeah.
project, one thing we started doing last year was institute a grant agreement with every
Right.
person who was getting money, and that does have a time limit in it. They can ask for an extension, but it does, every one of those has a time limit, which
Any
is
other,
3 years.
having them come in 3 months, 6 months.
And we have been
So
doing
we
that,
stay- and
yeah.
we've been doing it,
Yeah.
You've got a
absolutely.
rotating schedule.
That was something that
That's
was
why Ed is here
important to
tonight.
me, to set a standard so that this, projects
think
won't
that's
they won't
something
get
we-
swept
we-
under the rug.
Need to focus on going forward so we don't lose the progress that was built for.
And depend on Barry for that. He has been exceptional in
absolutely.
assisting me in doing that.
So, good conversation, but
Yep.
Yeah.
not really the focus of what we need
No.
to be.
Right,
So let's
and
get-
one
Ready to
thing this
move?
chart doesn't show is the amount of money left in the account for each of those.
Yeah, I can add that in, I just.
But, yeah,
All right, long-term
Sometimes I'm
debt.
trying to keep the number of columns down to whatever, but.
right.
Okay, so the long-term debt, so if you look, I mean, we were saying in 21, so a couple more lines down, we should be able to see, what the 700,000.
790? No, that's tennis
No,
courts.
790 says October 18, October 20, to 710.
The
So-
interest rates bumped from 1.5 to 5.0. I mean, that's.
I was
what
hoping we'd
happens
see
with
something that was exactly the 800,000, but it's some combination, you can see,
790 on the tennis courts.
but that was in 2018.
17, yeah.
710 for Wilkins is the bulk of the money in October of 20.
Mm-hmm.
But it was in 2021 that it hit, so it may be just the timing that they,
It may
I
be the
don't know
timing
the
when the
timing
bill
of it,
actually has to be
yeah.
paid, that they draw down from the money that's been bonded.
I would have thought there would have been a more direct, like, you can see the Glen Echo Recreation, June 23, the 259 that we just did. And the other June 23 one is the Cape and Reynolds for 40. And that is 299, 500 of the 314 that we saw. I would expect, I'll figure that out.
Okay.
Okay.
It's in there,
The numbers still aren't jiving, that's what we do know.
but there's also, it's bonds and other stuff, so there could be
Yeah.
other stuff that rounds it off. But the intent of having these schedules is we should be able to see that and understand it better, so. Next slide is, so it's the same 17 bonds and 4.2 million that we had
Mm-hmm.
known about last November, that hasn't changed by only those 2 bonds. This is just the debt service by year and added in the payment for 2023, 386,310, which was the 380 was rounded. It's rounded off here, it was in full on the other. And then it shows the next 2 years going out. We'll see, when we get to the budget, we'll see the 2025's debt service is the 345, 297.50, so the third column in after 2025. But, and there's a little bit of money here for the authorized but unissued is the 10,650.
Mm.
Does that include the current articles on, for example, the 1.3 million?
No,
No, because that hasn't been approved yet.
no. All right,
I almost added it in and I said to myself, yeah, I don't want
Yeah,
that here
it's
because
not- yeah.
So this then is the same information spread out across the page, broken down by category.
Mhm.
Just so that we can look at it both ways.
Mark, can you magnify that just a little bit?
this sheet here?
Yeah,
Yes, I can.
thank you. Thank you. Perfect.
So there's your categories on the left,
You got the principal, then the interest, and
and,
the total payments.
yeah, I'm trying to,
Again,
there's your years.
2025, you come down and you get the same 345,298 that we'll see in the budget.
See it there on the
Last
bottom.
page.
Thank you.
Right here, yep.
So
All right,
when does the original Glen Echo purchase run out?
30,
Back up.
I'm gonna go back up to the other sheet, cause it shows
Well-
better.
The price was.
34, isn't it?
Actually, it showed it better on the sheet, Mark.
Oh.
You can see the open space line.
34, yep.
2033 is the final 60.
So there it is, John, up on the right corner there.
We have bonds going out. I cut this off in 2035 only because
No, yeah,
think of how much smaller it gets if you add 5 more years of payments is all.
right.
So again, this is more just a quick reference, and if someone wanted to go look, you can see that A ties to B ties to C.
Well, this is helpful when I'm sitting in front of something where I can enlarge it and
Yeah.
look at it, or I'm looking at a piece of paper.
Well,
It's-
everybody should have it on their computers.
Yeah.
Yep, I just found it.
Okay, so now we get into the budget, and this is what I call the budget detail. And it's really the same format column-wise that we've seen on the budget since day one. And what I've done is just taken the long-term debt service by project. So again, I'm pretty sure you got the 17 bonds there, and Glen Echo is the 73,185 to 2025 in open space. The town hall cupola is in historic resources, and everything else in the budget right now is in undesignated. And that's just because of the way they roll.
It's the way the numbers work.
I've added, to make it easier for me to follow, but I think for everyone, I've also added over to the right, kind of totals, just so you can see stuff adding across the page. It's just, so you got all the long-term debt service, then the authorized but unissued, and in the budget, I have the 10,650, and there's 32,500 under community housing. That's the, I've put in 6 months worth of interest on HSL.
Yep.
Which would basically say, is our timeline, when do we expect that payment to be cut? This would suggest January 1st next year, and we carry interest for 6 months. I think that may be too early, but again, that's the kind of thing I think,
You needed to put it somewhere, so,
Well, it's just a conservative approach.
yeah, it's a conservative approach, right.
Yeah.
well, real conservative, you could put it all in, but I'm not sure we wanna cut that check up front. I think there's gonna be
I don't
some
think we will.
permitting and
No, but we have to budget it as if it.
it's
was-
better to budget it
Correct.
and not use it than to all of a sudden need it and not have it in the budget, although there are ways around that too. But it's, so that's there, and that's, I did not include the schedule that shows how I got the 10,650 and the 32,500, but, just because we have enough to look at in total. So if you flip down the page a little bit, it's only a couple projects anyway. And then here are the appropriations, and again, the 7 appropriations, and I thought I changed those article numbers, must have been on a different file. No, stay on the appropriations file.
Yeah, no, I am, I'm looking at the numbers for the Hebrew Senior Life. Why is the million, oh, it's an
The
undesignated.
million is coming out of undesignated, albeit phase 2, but the 1,000,003 is in a column for borrowing.
Got it.
And then the 2.3 million is where you can see it over there, and
Yeah.
it ties back down.
That's
over
what I
there
was
to the
looking for, I
3,666,000.
was trying to,
666, so just
If
an
you
easier
look up
way
at-
to,
if you look up at the heading, it says borrowing and
Yeah.
undesignated. It just threw me off where the million was first in the undesignated. And this is all projection, it has everything to do with what town meeting chooses to do, but,
and these, well, this is put into, this is what we do every year. We put
Yes,
all the
right.
projects in the budget. that
so
they
this
get
is what it's
fixed.
gonna look like if,
And the
everything
2,115,000 is the ending balance of bonds, the existing 17 bonds
right,
at the end of 2025.
all right?
And then I create a couple of totals down below, just, Bill doesn't always put those totals in, but I find it nice to be able to roll forward and see the totals.
I like it too, yeah.
And I included lines, because again, this is not a bad side, although
Oh, it's much easier to read
for
with
Rich
those
Terry, it's
horizontal lines
probably,
there.
well, yeah, the columns on the, I had trouble reading the thing just the size of the fonts. It's one of the reasons I do this. So then the next page is the actual budget summary, which is the format that we all are used to. Top of the page, we have the CPA commitments and abatements, and I think this information actually comes from the Board of Assessors, and they file a CP1, and we see those numbers. Very consistent, I add in the percentage, just so I can kind of see 2024 is 1.2% greater than what we got actual in 2023, and he basically budgeted, you know, 1% higher every year. Again, conservative way of looking at it, but that's a number, and that's one of the things that threw us, because we knew in November, we had the number, the 960,057.
Right.
Net receivable, that's what we put into our projection, and it came
Right.
out at 1,080,000. Most years, they're probably within 10 grand, up or down.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, this year, we got $120,000 difference when you compare those two numbers. So, again, that's on the list of things, we'll come back with better answers.
and we're gonna get those answers, but,
So, that's kind of the starting point for the budget, because it affects it. We can go just to the next section, which is the funding sources. The beginning fund balances. I have some issues with these numbers, which is why they're highlighted.
well, I kinda figured that was why they were highlighted.
Again, I'm gonna say, they don't really affect the important part of the budget, they're just used to kind of roll things forward. But I don't think they're correct, and I think we ought to get them correct. The one that bugs me the most is community housing, and I've been able to trace it back, and I had a good conversation with Perry yesterday that filled in a piece that I was not aware of. One of the things in trying to trace these back, it's been inconsistent how they're generated if I look from year to year to year. Community housing, and I brought this up with Bill last year, that when we approved the COVID relief for $510,000, the decision was made to transfer that money into the general fund and pay the bills out of the general fund. We paid 382, they've never given us back the 137,
Really?
really.
Did they
They did,
transfer
it's
the
not-
additional 250 that we?
No, no.
Okay, that never
I
got
didn't
moved.
understand why they moved, because it's the only project I've ever seen move, and I didn't realize that it was done on the 21 budget, and I wasn't here then, but I pulled back some old documents, and it said right on there, transfer to general fund.
That's right, because you were a part of the subcommittee
I
as
was on the
a,
subcommittee,
as a
I wasn't
resident.
on CPC at the time.
Right,
And
so you knew about it, but didn't understand this part of it.
I knew it was missing from the reserve, right, I
Right.
didn't understand how they did that piece.
But remember, the
But I knew it was
town,
missing from the reserve, I assumed it was probably just in the undesignated fund balance, but I no longer believe that based on the way they put it in that budget.
so they owe us 100 and,
I believe they owe us,
50.
unless they can show me that it's part of the 6,000,003, and that's what I'm pushing them on.
okay.
Again.
So we
we'll
may
get
end
that
up
answer.
getting a small windfall back from that.
You don't think they included it with that big jump, that 22% jump? They just put it into that?
Nah, it's.
No, that's local
Still
receipts
not
from
enough.
town
Yeah,
residents paying their tax on
Yeah.
their property.
that number could be wrong for other reasons, I would not expect it to be because of that 137, that's.
Well,
But
Keep
it's a,
on
but it's
on
a
that.
a
That-
remote possibility, I mean, since it's so odd, but whatever.
it would be extraordinary if that's where it
But when
went.
you said that the community housing numbers are what bothered you and that you expected that was
Because I think they owe us 137,000.
to the 621.
Yeah.
To go raise that.
Yeah, they-
I mean,
I'm sorry, what?
so it's 621 right now for community housing.
But it
Yes.
should be an additional 137 on top of that.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's funny, Mike, that you caught that, because I always wondered, I says, wait a minute, we haven't spent dime one on community
Right,
housing.
right.
And all of a sudden, we're like flatlined by 500,000, where'd it go? 350 of it went to the COVID relief, but I couldn't find the other 150 in my head. Give or take, I mean, it's actually
It's
137.
not unlike, John, if you recall, years ago,
Yeah.
when we had the town hall slate roof, and I had just become budget, and one of the, we presented some numbers, and people started at, well, what happened? We shouldn't have spent that whole 150, and we went back and looked at it, and we were supposed to spend up to 150, and when we had them go back and look at the spending, and they gave us back $90,000, because basically they would have been supplanting other money,
Right,
Yeah,
the way the approval was.
the
done.
non-historical
So-
part.
There's also precedence for fixing the account, but again,
once it's been erroneously
They fixed-
recorded.
they fixed our accounts, but it never got reflected on the CP2. It's still what I would call a variance out there on the CP2. That's why I hesitate to say it will get fixed on the CP2, but it will get fixed in our records.
And I think, you know, the clock that I have ticking in my head is the public hearings. We really, and again, you've made extraordinary efforts here. But if we don't get this fixed by the budget, we're gonna have a miserable time at FinCom. They're just gonna hammer us. So it's really important we get this resolved before we go to FinCom. And that could happen late February to early March.
We don't get it resolved, well, no. I don't know that I fully agree. I hope we have it resolved, but otherwise, we're gonna have the town finance director sitting there defending
Yeah,
why they took money out of the CPA funds without authorization and refused to put it back, because it's pretty
Right.
clear in the legislation that it
right.
has to go
It
back.
has to go back.
Or they prove to me that it is somewhere in there and I just don't have the details to be able to
But
see it.
I think for the purpose of going forward hearings, we ought to focus on a correct CP2 for this year. And if there are discrepancies in prior years, we're gonna have to work those out, but if we raise them at a hearing before they're worked out, it'll just cause
Yeah.
confusion.
I agree,
It's gonna
but
be a
these are a
delicate
group of
situation.
fairly savvy people, and I suspect they'll pick up on errors. They'll wanna know the same thing, because I've been asked a number of times, well, that seems strange. You've never spent money on community housing yet, you know, there's a big gap now or a loss in that column. Where's that coming from? Up until this point, it's been like, well, you know, we did the COVID. Oh, yeah, that's true, but the numbers weren't adding up in their heads either.
Yeah.
Just food for thought moving
No,
forward.
It's the reason I take, actually, you can go out onto the coalition website, which reminded me, that's how I got this information. Remember Barry said, I don't have all the CP2s. Put on the coalition website, they have them all summarized.
Yeah, you can get
And you
them.
can download it, and that's how I created this sheet with the CP2 data from 2012 all the way
Forward.
to today.
Okay.
I had forgotten that that's how I did it a couple of years ago, so I ended up redoing it the other night, but fortunately, it's the same data. It works out.
Let's just do our best to clear up anything and,
We will get it cleared up. I don't wanna be trying to go into this much detail with this many open items in front of the finance committee.
no, I do not.
Absolutely.
Not because we're trying to hide anything, we'll be fully transparent, they'll get your budget summary, but I agree, that's not the place to pick this apart.
I would
So-
much rather go in there and just focus on the things that matter to the budget, which is really the appropriations, reservations, and the debt service stuff, so.
They have been very happy with the work that you have done over the past couple of years and what we've been able to present
We've
to
given
them.
them a
Yeah.
lot of data.
Yeah, and they've been pleased with that.
So the CPA surcharge, again, it's that actual 2023, so the $1,080,000 that we beat to death times 95% is the 102.6. And I say this because we had three different versions of the budget floating around, because MJ did one and Barry did his. The state reimbursement is 20% of the net receivable, which is the CP1 data up above, so that
Yep.
number ties out. And then again, we plug in 10 and 8, pretty much that's what we do on the investment income and other, and leads back to the question on last year's investment income, but we'll get into that, we'll know that.
Yep,
So, then it's just what we normally do, you've got the administrative expenses at 4.99, because apparently there's a penalty if you go over 5. I don't know that the difference between 4.99 and 5 is that much, but Bill put it into 4.99, so that's
Okay.
what they did. I'm like,
We won't hit that number.
we'll never
or
spend
even come
$61,000.
close.
I mean, worst case, if that $1,080,000 is deemed to be too high, then the 102.6 comes down, the 1,238 comes down a little bit.
right.
I don't think it's that far off in terms of 2025, but I also don't like not feeling 100% comfortable that it's accurate, so. The reservations, the 10%, and then I brought the two totals from the page, the previous page, the subtotal of debt service, which is the 350,
388, 40.
388, oh, because I added in that extra $30,000 for HSL.
Yes.
448, yeah.
And then the appropriations, the 3,666,000, and that tells us what the total of those two are, and kind of
Ending
rolls
reserve will
forward
be
that- that number.
4.75.
Let me just ask a question though. Just so you've got debt service, the 32,500, plus the full amount of the borrowing, 1.3 million. And they're both being subtracted, is the 32,500 just debt service?
The 32,500 is just the debt service.
Okay,
Yeah, the
Right.
borrowing is just a separate column to track the bond stuff. They
Okay.
don't get added to, which is why they don't get added together or anything.
Right.
part of the appropriations, but, and I actually asked Barry Crimmins the other night to take a look and talk to his people and give us a kind of idea when they would be expecting that money.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
I think
funny,
clearly it's
I
gonna
happened to
be
talk to him tonight as well and
a
asked him
building
the same
permit in hand
question,
and
so.
ready to go stuff, but
So we
probably
know
not gonna
that,
happen in 2025.
yeah, they're not looking to, or they will not seek to access the money until they have physically broken ground and are actually doing construction. The piece he didn't know, and I didn't even know you asked him this, but I asked him the same thing tonight. So how is that gonna get doled out? Are you gonna want it in increments? Are you gonna want the whole thing? Just give us a sense so we know how that money is checking out, so
I'd
to
go a
speak.
step further. We should get their sense, but then we get our own input as to
Yeah.
how we wanna build it out.
I
It's
think
not
it should be a
money.
fair and balanced thing. I know that in the past, like with the State Theater, we made that last money in, meaning they had to substantially provide the construction.
Yeah.
We would put in that last
We
five
didn't-
and a half.
We didn't word the motion that way for this one, though.
No, we did
I
not.
know if I was on their end,
They would
I-
want it, the budget process made me.
But we
focus
need to
on that
understand
piece a
how
little
they're
more,
going to do it.
Because it impacts.
or how they'd like to do it, as you said.
And I
Yes.
say that because MJ did have a line on the budget that they gave us their first pass for like 136,000. It was called unauthorized, unissued, authorized unissued for HSL.
Right.
I don't know why it would be 136,000, I don't know if she had, and that's part of the details I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
I just did my own calculation and said, a half a year, we can make it more if we want, it seems like a reasonable way to get started to me. And then, this will need to be reconciled to whatever they got. And I suspect they've put a schedule in for the book tomorrow, that is probably gonna be a little bit different. And we can then
We'll find out.
reconcile it.
Yeah, because we have to take these numbers and plug them into the motion, the printed motion.
Yeah.
Yes, we
which-
do.
Which is slightly different.
Which is why as much
Aren't they
as,
putting in a motion and probably with the numbers they're using?
so we put in a motion that Brian and Barry both,
Yeah,
Brian,
it's a temporary
Barry
number.
wrote it, it's a temporary, it's missing the numbers.
Well, it has the numbers, they're just in orange, because
Yeah.
they're temporary.
But they're temporary,
Right, and it says that.
which again is why I'm concerned that we may, in principle, support our budget tonight, but I think we might have to meet again before the public hearings and ratify the actual budget.
Right, which we can do on Zoom.
We can do it on Zoom, and it can be a one-item thing. It shouldn't take more than, 15 minutes, half an hour,
Yeah, I'm
depending on the
hoping
level of discussion,
Maybe as
but,
soon as next week when the new person comes in, I get a little bit of time. and
Then so be
we
it,
get some
right.
insight to what they got and say, I mean, I can certainly make quick changes here to go back to some of the.
oh, I'm not concerned
I
about
don't
what
wanna
you have
that
to do.
Unless
Yeah.
we're feeling like we got all the right answers and the right reason for doing it.
And
I'm not proposing that we change it just because there's a difference.
no,
'Cause that's
But
not how I'm-
do we ratify tonight, then re-ratify as necessary?
I
or
think
we're
we'll
not gonna
have to
ratify?
accept the budget in principle and then, and meet to ratify the actuals.
I
With the
so move.
caveat that
Yeah.
we will reconcile it, and if
Yep.
it's substantially or significantly
Different,
different, we will meet again to review
Yeah.
it with the committee.
So I.
so if we're
I don't
within
expect
a
it's gonna
reasonable
be
spitting
significantly
distance.
different. And I don't want two versions out there, so.
No, but what I want to ensure, and again, we can do it quickly, even if the numbers aren't substantially different. I just want to know that this committee as a whole looked at the budget in actuality and voted on that, not, we're voting on gray right now. And has nothing to do with the work you've put in there. It's just, we don't have the actual numbers before us. So I want to at least give the committee an
We
opportunity
may not have
to
the
say
actual
yay.
totals, we got 98% of them.
I know.
But we wanna get.
So I move we approve Gray.
Second.
Yeah, we will. We're gonna get to that. We're going through the motions. Is that the last
That was
page?
it, yeah.
That is it, okay.
I think 10 pages is probably more than I should be doing.
Yeah, and I
More
gotta
than
be
you want
honest,
to hear.
you've done a fantastic
Thank you.
job on this,
Thank you.
Michael.
'Cause your grasp of it is impressive, certainly.
It's just, you understand what my concerns are, right? I wanna be fully transparent, and I also want you and I to be able to sit before FinCom and say, yes, as a committee, we approved this budget. Even if it's, you know, slightly different than what
And
we're
I
seeing
wanna
tonight.
move on, so.
I do too. So update on Benson Road open space
So,
acquisition.
do we need that
We
motion?
need to vote.
Not yet,
No,
not yet. We're gonna vote the motions,
what do you mean, to accept the treasurer's report?
Yeah.
on item 9. Oh,
Yeah,
we don't,
that-
do we need to accept, would you like the treasurer's report accepted, Michael?
Yeah, that's what we usually.
Do you wanna
Well,
make
I
a
already
motion?
nominated and he seconded, I believe.
That we're
I did.
accepting the
Great.
treasurer's report
As-
Treasurer report.
as it stands, okay. Any debate or comments or questions from any members?
Who seconded that?
I did.
Rich Terry did.
Okay.
So by roll call, John Morton,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Yes.
John Linehan, Dwight,
Yes.
Larice,
Yes.
Don Brady,
Yes.
Ola Bumney.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Ola Bumney, and the chair votes yes.
And I vote yes.
You got,
I'm sorry, Rich. I walked right past you and you seconded it. Make sure you get Rich's vote.
I got it.
Thank you, Rich. I'm not perfect, brother. John Linehan, tell us how we're doing with Benson Road.
Well, taking longer than we had expected, but we had to break it up so that the two lots could go through is it zoning or?
Planning
Planning
board
board.
for an A and R,
Yeah.
approval not required.
So
Just an oxymoron.
that was done. The plans are stamped. They're supposed to be picked up tomorrow night and taken to the registry on Friday for registration or whatever it
And then the
Recording.
closing,
is. Recording.
the passing of money will happen at the recording, or?
No, that's just to record the plan.
Okay,
That's just to set the table so the town can now say,
Oh,
we,
okay.
now we need to set up a transaction with the.
so we got a ways to go yet.
Yeah, we just had to get the lots finalized.
Okay.
Our surveyor fellow evidently had COVID and was out for an extended period.
Okay. So that's the update for the moment?
Yeah, it's been going slowly, but making progress now.
Does it make sense to put an update on for for March, or do you wanna wait until April? Put it
Why
on
don't
in
we put
March,
it
and
on,
if you
yeah.
have something?
Yeah.
Put it on for March.
Yeah,
okay.
please, thank you, Barry.
Okay.
All right, update on the Old Stoughton Music Society storage equipment. Ed Quigley is with us tonight. You're president, am I correct?
I am the president for less than a year.
Well, welcome, and thank you for being here.
we should hum Hail to the Chief right now.
Not necessary. When we first appeared before this committee, I had been in my role for 2 days.
Oh, okay.
So far, not a lot has happened for a variety of reasons. If you've seen the space we have, it's roughly 110 square feet.
Mhm.
It is loaded with at least 120 years worth of material. There's older stuff in there. As I said to somebody, how would you describe the room? I'd say, well, you have to step out in the hallway to change your mind.
Yeah, it's tight.
But, so what we need to do, we've created a process for doing this, because it's gonna have to be phased in. So roughly speaking, we have to review what we have there, kind of rework it, reorganize it. So what do we need to get a hold of immediately? What can be kind of put aside for long-term examination? And then phase in the purchase of the equipment. Because when we have to be able to bring in a storage unit, move stuff out of the old storage unit, and get the old storage units out of there, because
Put the new one
we
in.
can't put them into the space for the Historical Society. They need that space. So there are about 10 file cabinets of various ages and styles in there. We couldn't do it all at once. So our plan is to start with one of the larger lateral files where we could probably condense quite a bit in there. Get the old metal and wooden cabinets out. See if we can dispose of those right away. I wanna talk to the town about that.
Okay.
You know, if we can have them picked up, then once we have a look, then we can kind of evaluate where we are, then bring in the next piece. So I would think probably by the end of this fiscal year, we should be in pretty good shape.
Okay.
Some of the unintended things, our music director's been dealing with illness, which she had to take a step back,
Yeah, I know.
which she deserved to be able to do. I was working a job, I thought I was still retired, I ended up taking a job, which ends next week.
Okay.
So I will be able to spend a lot of my time going up there and working. And we depend on the members of the chorus to do all the work, and everyone's a volunteer.
And it's hard to get volunteers.
And most of them are working during the day, so
Yeah.
that makes it kind of awkward.
And
some-
sorting and evaluating is tough, I can vouch for that, you just got these decisions to make about, we saving this or not, so. But I hear you, it's gonna be done piecemeal, so you will attack.
Not piecemeal,
Well,
in phases.
Okay, but they're not gonna be,
Piecemeal
there aren't gonna be,
suggests
there aren't gonna
grabbing
be,
stuff.
there aren't gonna be 5 cabinets coming in and you're replacing 5 at once, it's gonna
No.
be.
We'll do it with the larger units first, so that we'll have space to put that in, and we can push everything to this. I
And
mean, we
because
won't be
they're
able to
larger,
use
it
the
Do
room.
you-
absorbs
do you
more
envision
stuff.
then the purchases also being kited like, I mean, in order, so that you will look at this, purchase, look at that, purchase, look at that.
I wanna
purchase?
talk to the people here at town, because I'm sure we can set that up. So that we could even do all of the purchasing.
If
And-
you call procurement, Ed,
Yeah.
we've hired somebody new that is working as our purchasing agent. Call Fran Brutiniti and she'll connect you with him. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name off the
Okay.
top of my head, but she knows who it is. You'll probably work directly with him. I have a quick question for you, and I think I know the answer. There's no additional space at that building that they could use as a staging area, am I correct?
Well, for 5 days, I told them there was a window, when you say staging, I mean, the stuff that will come out, if we're taking right outside, no problem. I mean, right in the back, but if it's gonna be in the hall, or the new stuff's in the hall,
For more than 5 days, it becomes an issue.
yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, we're flexible, but, you know, if you don't draw some lines, then it could stay
No,
forever.
no, I
So it's-
understood.
So that we will give them at least 5 days at some point, but the process, I mean, it may be easier in some way if you're doing 2 at a time, and then another 2, then you won't have 5, I mean, I was concerned about a log jam of all the stuff out
Sure.
there.
Yeah, we talked
and
a
all the
little bit
stuff
about
waiting.
that.
And it
that
sounds like you're
So
not gonna do
you-
that.
By using this, by phasing it like this, we shouldn't interfere with any of the work that they need to do in the Historical Society. Because if we put stuff out in the hallway, even for 5, you're kind of blocking up half
Yeah.
of the building.
And I know it's an
downstairs.
odd, tight,
So one of the
space,
things I
so-
don't know, if that little door that we have, if we can put things out in that stairway.
Out to the outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, if we could
But that- yeah,
move
yeah.
an empty cabinet out there, knowing that within 2 days, it would be.
Within
taken
5
away.
days. yeah.
Or otherwise, just we carry it out the other way, but yeah, that door with a great deal of effort does open, and stuff can be taken out that way. Being able to close it and locking it is another issue, because
We've got some big guys.
We'll get it
that
worked
door
out.
jams, the door jams, but no, I'm just saying, on our end, the security there, the security of
Yeah.
that door is the fact that it's jammed so tight, no one can open it, even though it's not locked, but, just
So
saying.
if you can get it open, you can have it.
So yes, that,
Or if we can get it open, we better get it closed.
Yeah, if you can get it open, you better get it closed.
Yeah, but I think this process will allow us to have a minimal impact
Okay.
yeah.
on.
And you know that you and Dwight are the two that would coordinate
Right, we-
that,
we
so I'll
actually
leave
talked
that in
about
your
it over the
capable
weekend,
hands,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah, and once that he was on board, I felt more comfortable with the
Sure.
process.
no problem
Being
at
an
all.
administrator, he's used to moving things around.
well,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
used to telling other people how to move.
Right, well, whatever.
As long as it's working out
I
and
think-
and
I
both
think
The only
parties
thing
are
I-
happy, that's,
I need to check now with the procurement, if we can order like the first 2 or 3 phases, but just have them delivered.
Staggered.
a staggered delivery and then.
They're
we
probably
wouldn't
gonna
have
tell
worry
you to
about it.
order it when you need it.
Yeah.
Have it, but I'm guessing at that. Talk to Fran up in procurement. She'll connect you with our purchasing agent and it'll all work out.
Do you need a
So-
contact number for Fran, or do you have it?
I can get it, so,
You sure?
yeah, I think, in fact, I think Renee has it, she had some initial contact.
Just to make it easier for you, Ed, would you contact Fran via email
Yep.
and ask for the purchasing agent's contact info? He must have a direct line there. Let's get you the right info and that'll make your life a little
Yeah, if you
easier.
could just
Yeah,
email it to me or.
yeah.
Sure.
Do you have Ed's email?
I do.
Okay, great.
But it
So
sounded
we'll
like
get-
there was some flexibility or based on what you see as opposed to what you, I mean, I don't know if it's that absolute thing, whatever the amount was, you got five, and if you know for sure all that stuff's going in, or based on your determinations, you may say, okay, we're not gonna buy this one.
Yeah, we may, that's what, another reason why I wanna phase it, we may
Right.
find out that this might be, not be the ideal way to store certain things that
Yeah.
are down there. But absolutely, all the music and the music books and the scores, all of that stuff has to be in metal cabinets, or
It's in trouble.
it's, I mean, some of it is archived and just one dry look, everything in there was at least 120 years old. Fortunately, not wet, not damp, so.
That's
Historical
good.
preservation here.
That's true.
All right.
But all of the new, all the cabinets we're looking at have raised up, you know, a good 4 inches above floor level before the storage even starts.
Okay.
Instead of the cabinets that have that little 1 inch ridge at the bottom.
Just to keep water off of them,
Yeah,
in the
Yeah.
event that water ever infiltrates the building.
all right. Just keep, if you could, just keep us up to date with any progress that you make by
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, I can send a quick email just saying phase one
Perfect.
started, this is where we are.
Yeah, and if
Perfect.
he's talking to me too, I mean, I'll be
You
a
can give
conduit
us
as well.
regular
Yeah.
updates as well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
Come March, you're gonna see a lot of me, so.
That's
You'll
okay.
probably be sick saying, that guy was here again.
No, I'll put some, I say, we need help with this end here.
Well,
This
thank
is-
you for that, exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I
It's my
appreciate
pleasure.
your
Well, thank you.
efforts,
Yeah,
Ed.
it's nice to have you around.
This really means a lot to the society to have a place where we can protect all that history.
Well, we, being a committee that gets the opportunity to support groups like yourself, being the oldest music society in the country, I'm
Continue.
quite honored. That's correct. I'm honored to be a part of that, and I'm glad we could help you, so,
We appreciate it, thank you so much.
thank you.
It's a credit to the town of Stoughton as well.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
And do let Renee
You
know that
All the members of town meeting
she,
who saw this and saw it as a worthy
they did, yeah.
worthy cause, so it's,
Let
speaks
Renee,
well for our town.
let Renee know she's in our prayers.
I will.
Thank you. Anything else, Ed, or?
Nope, that's all I have. for
Wonderful.
tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate you coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
Next
I'm gonna
item,
leave because I don't get to vote on anything.
it's
so-
okay. I mean, you could stick around, but. Update on the Hanson School Playground. Barry, I know that you spoke at length with Joyce, and she gave you an emailed
Yes,
update.
Joyce sent
She
us
had
an
a-
email, which I forwarded, and I have it in my,
She's retired.
no,
Historical,
here it
I
is.
have an interest in this one, so I'm gonna listen.
Oh,
Okay.
sure,
I was
Yeah.
a
please.
principal there.
I remember
Oh.
that, yeah.
Okay.
When this came about, you would,
Well, at any
spoke
rate-
on this.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Joyce said that they're in discussions with the designer of the playground, and what they're trying to do is involve the students who have really been, have driven this project from the beginning. There's a group at the high school, which is a student advisory group or committee, that said, let's do this. And they've been taking an active role, although some of them at this point have already graduated and moved on. But she said they have three different groups to consider when they design the playground. First, the fact that the students run from kindergarten to grade 5, as
Yeah.
opposed to just lower grades or just the higher elementary grades. So that's quite a range of people to have to serve with a playground and different types of equipment. Also, they have to be cognizant of the special needs community. That was one of the things
There's a
we talked about when
huge
they were here,
interest, yeah.
that their equipment be adaptable to people who have both physical and
Sensory
and
issues.
sensory issues,
Yep.
thank you. Yep. And finally, the community at large, because the Hanson Playground is open to the community. It's not just to serve the students at the Hanson School. It's open for anyone in the town who wants to be there. So
In that sense, it's like the Wilkins playground, right, which is also,
it is, although this one, unlike the Wilkins, this one actually is owned by the school. The Wilkins is town property rather than school property,
Correct.
even though it's behind the school. The other thing they have to do is she said, I've asked our house doctor architect for a scope on the drainage design, so they're going to start investigating work on the soils, so they know what they're dealing with. So
I
it-
suspect that won't be a big deal.
I don't think so, but
No.
it's still gonna be done.
well, how much of the same kind of process did we do with the Wilkins?
Exactly the same
Okay, so
process.
that-
Yeah, there were
hopefully-
drainage
So it's very
issues
much
there
in
as well,
line.
but
Yeah.
the
There's-
drainage issues at the Wilkins, I
Right,
think,
the
were more
drainage is different,
extensive.
but this, it's the actual equipment or whatever.
So yes,
There's
they're actually,
precedent here.
the types of equipment they'll be seeking at this playground will be as up-to-date as technology allows it to be. So you may not be comparing apples to apples, but you won't be because things have changed.
You have a new
Children with
hybrid app.
autism and sensory issues, that field is constantly adapting and changing, so
Much
we
more
may
ADA
see,
compliant.
sorry?
This equipment would be much more ADA compliant.
My understanding, yes, it will be ADA compliant fully, but this actually takes a step beyond that and considers children with sensory issues, and other emotional issues that aren't necessarily covered under, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's a pretty thorough, and we asked for that, if I'm being fair. Got into a bit of a row with one of the members on finance over this. But it was very important that all the equipment that goes into to this playground is considered for all the children, not just a particular group of children.
So
it
is this
it is
gonna include a luge run down the hill?
I would like that, but I'm not sure that's a good
Controlled
idea.
sliding rather than chaos that has been there for God knows how many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, So if
I'm
there
glad
are,
we're-
I'm
glad
sorry.
we're going ahead on this, because that property too has a great history. We've traced when they, that used to be a big hill, and then they took the front
half
half
of
of the
it,
hill out
yeah.
of there to create the space where the Hanson is, and
Yep.
that could go on, but I'll stop.
So does she have an anticipated time frame that she'll have an actual physical design here, or?
No, we don't, I didn't get that information, but if that was one of the things that was leading to something I was just gonna say, which is that if we do have any questions for her, we can either email them to her, or she's willing to come back at our next meeting if that's whatever the committee would rather see happen.
So thoughts from the committee, or should we just have her back in another 3 months?
Well, it sounds to me like they're in the planning stage, that they don't have a plan yet, so it's a little premature to have them come in and tell us that they don't have a plan, but they're thinking about it.
3 months.
3 months is sufficient?
Yeah, but I can ask what kind of time frame they're looking at to get, to have
Ask
a
her if
design.
3 months is a sufficient amount of time to have something a bit more concrete.
Yep,
If it is, have her in at 3. If it's not, have her in at 6, whatever it,
okay,
I'd like to see this built over the summer when the school is closed. I think that was the intent.
yeah.
From Dr. Rob at the time, who was actually heading out when this project got approved. But, so I know Dr. Baeta is sort of carrying a different torch. But I think he's on board with this fully. He's expressed that to us, and I'd like to see it going in the summer. I'd really, really like that, so.
Yeah, well, sometimes there's a lag between the design and the actual
I
construction.
know that, I know.
Because it has to go out to bid, so I'm not sure that would be possible.
Some of it does, yeah, for the
Yeah,
construction
yeah.
phase, so.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on that, Barry?
So I think that's all I have on that.
Excellent, thank you. Good night, Ed. Update on Cape and Reynolds, I think you have some good news for us, Rich? Yep,
First of all, the procurement is readying the bids to be advertised in Central Register in March. Right at the moment, and I'll give you a little background. In September, the Stanton Foundation awarded the town of Stoughton $25,000 to 100% funding of the redesign of the dog park to their specifications. Warner Lawson was the landscape architect. The engineering department, Fran Britton and myself will work very closely with the landscaping architect, and they had submitted various concepts during that time frame, which we finally settled on. That final design of the dog park, plus the original project of the community garden and all the off-street parking, ADA compliant walkways and stairways, are now combined together. And part of Warner Larson's contract for that $25,000 was to integrate it into our plan, so we can submit it to our prospective bidders. That's almost complete. They've submitted 2 bills now for a good portion of that $25,000. In addition to that, the plans are currently being reviewed by Stanton Foundation, which is their requirement, before we can let them out to the central register. That's ongoing as of last week. Once that occurs, Fran Brunetti is expecting a very good response. Already, there's word on the street that this is coming, and people have responded, including the low bidder from last year ago, when we didn't have enough money. To date, in terms of funding that's available, we have the balance left over from the first round of funding in 2015, I think around $154,000. We have the current $463,000, which was voted on for town meeting this past May. We've certified the $30,000 from Conservation Commission with Jim Conlon's help, and that's now in the hands of the treasurer. The Friends of the Cape and Reynolds Farm had $50,000 out of our money market. Rachel Morton was kind enough to deal with those guys, because they don't trust anybody. That check arrived the other day. It's in our checking account, gaining a little interest in the cooperative bank. As soon as we get to that point of the bidding process and it's awarded, we will then turn over $50,000. So those funds alone, previous funding, current spring funding, and the donation from Conservation and the Friends, equals about $770,000. The Stanton Foundation will fund up to 90% of the hard costs of the dog park construction. And they've given us 2 estimates based on what they do. And in September, they gave us an estimate of funding based on their best calculations would be $218,000 to the project, to the town. They've revised that down because they feel they can do, the dog park can be built cheaper, less expensively, in the same result, down to $144,000. I have a feeling it's gonna come somewhere in between. So, with that said, I think we're in good position financially, considering you don't know where bids are going these days. Mark, you're in that kind of business.
I do.
It's all over the place. But the good news is, I've seen in my business stabilization of costs of goods to the point where.
Finally.
Yeah, it hasn't been a 1 or 2% increase over the last 3 or 4 months. I'm anticipating the same thing will happen in these construction material.
So it might actually help that we ended up getting delayed a little bit.
Yes, in hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
And so Fran is extraordinarily excited. She's totally involved. She said she's never worked on a grant process before, neither have I. So you learn as you go. And I gotta say, it's a great team.
And this guy led the charge, I'll let you know. You good?
We got a good team. We have a team.
So,
Engineering has been astounding. Nick Dufresne is the new guy on
Yeah.
board. He's with us every step of the way. He's been on site with me numerous times. The most current activity that you may have noticed already is the landscape architect recommended back in November that we clear out those trees which had to come down.
You did that, though.
That's been done.
Yeah.
And
And it looks good.
yes, it looks really good.
Yep.
Maltby is an arborist, not just tree guys, they're
Yeah.
arborists. So they've made some strong recommendations about leaving stumps in place so it wouldn't adversely affect the root system of the remaining trees. And we've done that. So it's really been cleared out, but we've left a lot of big trees and also very young trees, as John has recommended from day one when I propositioned with this idea back in 2019 behind the barn. So we may have a few little changes to make in terms of what trees may come down still if they're in the way. The idea is that the trees that remain will be protected from the dog's activities with either stones or with a platform that's designed to be both a step high, 1 step high, 2 step high for people and dogs to sit on, but protect the tree and have the platform be big enough to accommodate any growth of the tree without hindering growth. And that's an alternate design that we may or may not select depending on where the price of the project comes in.
That's a good idea, because it could be used as a bench for the people who bring the dogs.
Yes,
It could,
yes.
although stones are cheap
Yeah.
Stones are cheap, and so that's why it's an alternate.
and readily accessible.
17, I got a budget here, and it showed $17,000 to build this kind of a platform around trees. Granted, it's not a typical construction, but it's typical carpentry. And,
I wouldn't mind building those for you at 17
right, yeah,
grand.
Right. The other thing that they recommend.
That'd be nice money.
I have to give Warner Larson a lot of credit for thinking the way they think. The dog park slopes a little bit towards the power lines, about a 2.5 foot grade difference from the beginning behind the barn. And they're concerned about washout if there's a heavy rains. I think they're overthinking it, but they're taking a proactive approach. Based on all the rains we've had lately, I haven't noticed that, because I've been down there a lot. So what they've suggested is, in that third of the dog park, put in not rice stone. Rice stone's a larger variation of stone dust. It's very good for the dog's feet. It's very, allows water to go through. Stone dust doesn't. But in that section, in that far corner, they're recommending engineered wood fiber. Engineered, in our meeting with them, virtual meeting, they brought this up, and my first question was,
The hell is
what kind of
that?
experience have you had with engineered fiber in the dog park? And they said, none, but we put it in children's playgrounds.
Yeah, but how does
We-
it, I wonder how it absorbs
Well,
urine and,
It will, but it's gonna break down over time.
That's correct, it will
You're
break
gonna
down.
have to replace it.
Right.
So,
Yee.
we use it on some of our playground areas, and it breaks
For
down.
the animals?
No,
For the children.
kids, yeah.
Yeah,
I go to a great dog park down in Brewster, and they have areas with pea stone,
mm-hmm,
and then other areas with sand, and around the whole thing, it's just natural, all around the outside of the walk. You know, there's a circular walk for everybody,
mm-hmm.
and that's just natural dirt. And the dogs, it's big enough that the trees aren't taking a beating. I think it's bigger than what we're gonna have.
Yeah, we have about 0.4 acres.
Yeah.
The engineered wood fiber, is a company in New Hampshire, I actually contacted them, and they sell it to the town of Stoughton currently for our playgrounds. And it's recommended that it be 12 inches thick, so that if a child falls, it's like hitting a mattress.
Right,
For a dog, they're gonna reduce that by 50%.
Yeah, my only concern
all
with
it
it is the
wood fiber
replacement
that's been
cost.
rolled. You know, you roll it and it doesn't have, it's not splintery.
Right.
But was this also supposed to do with the possible erosion? There's supposed to be an erosion control as well?
Right, they were concerned that the wash would be
But it
high up there. and they
It seems
weren't-
like the stone, I mean, unless you see rivulets and gullies that are coming now above in this heavy rain we've had, it doesn't.
I haven't seen it, and so, the option is to go with, they call it rice stone, because it's smaller, it's bigger than.
And it's
stone
good for
dust.
drainage.
Right, and the thing is, rice stone is a lot more expensive per cubic yard than the fiber. The firm up in New Hampshire sells $16 a cubic yard, not counting freight. AA Will sells the same stuff for $40 a yard.
Not including
delivery.
freight.
Um, And so those are the couple of options we have to work with. I wanted to give you a quick overview.
But it would be permanent.
Overall.
So we assume it would be more permanent than the wood fiber, which would.
Yeah, and that's what I would caution you on. The CPC by statute, cannot maintain a project.
Understood.
So it would be, I think, in your best interest to find as permanent a solution as you can, because any maintenance is gonna fall to the town. So the town may not have, and I've heard from prior select boards, they don't want to be maintaining things like this. So the more permanent solution we can bring forward, I think the happier the town will be as a whole. Just an opinion, it's one thing to put a little extra rice stone down, get it at A will and dump it in every year. It's another thing to replace the surface because it has to go because it aged.
It is a maintenance issue. There
Yeah.
are maintenance.
I don't wanna, you know, I'm not a dog park designer, but having buried substrates might be advantageous. You know, different substrates in
Mhm.
different areas.
Abington is a Stanton Foundation project, and I went over there, and it's all rice stone, and it's about twice the size. And in speaking with two gentlemen that were there with their dogs, they couldn't be happier with how they were able to navigate through just walking it. It was ADA compliant, and the dogs seemed to enjoy it tremendously. So,
I think that the fiber also has the problem of residual odor over time
Could.
that stone wouldn't have, because stone
Yeah.
gets washed when it rains.
I will say this, the area that I saw at least, I haven't, taken a whole lot of time there, but it seemed nicely canopied is a good way to, there's a lot of nice canopy, tree canopy in that area, which will slow down heavier rain like that and allow it to be absorbed into the natural surfaces. Just a thought.
I agree with you. I looked at a picture of a satellite picture that we used some years ago when describing it at town meeting, and I looked at it now, and where the leaves are. And the trees that were blown back in that summer picture were extensive. And there's gonna be a fair amount of shade,
Yeah.
and it will also protect it from heavy rains.
And we'll be grateful for that shade.
It will. And again, I've said this many times, every dog park I've been to now, 14 or 15, the single biggest complaint was no shade.
Yep.
Do we have any benches designed in?
Yes, benches and dog.
$17,000 benches around trees.
Benches, picnic-style benches, other seating arrangements are all part of the proposal that the landscape architects have provided,
You
including,
can save money by incorporating that barrier around the tree as the bench.
that's one aspect of it, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, you just stick benches in front of it and rocks around the trees and yay, we have a win.
that's right.
So it will be one bid going out for the whole job, including the community garden, the whole shebang
Yes,
is one
yes.
bid?
They will go out as one bid, but in terms of, doing the money's expenditures for dog park, the,
It'll
Sure,
separate
we'll have
for,
to separate
yeah.
that out, and the format that they use is designed to do that. So that we can account for all the monies expended for everything from the fence inward. Right now, the trees that came down, the landscape architects thought it would cost about $25,000. Mulvey came in at $23,000 or less. So I said, it won't cost more than 23, and we might be able to get it done for less. And they are the go-to tree company for the town of Stoughton.
Yeah.
It can be tasked.
Yeah.
We don't have to go out for bids. And so some of the monies that were awarded, had been awarded, the town meeting had been, that 23,000 is already earmarked, or whatever that number comes in, less than that. And I can't say enough about Malpe's expertise in being careful about the ecosystem.
Hmm.
They're
Which
real-
is
they're real
important.
Professionals.
Yeah.
That's my report.
Thank you, Rich.
you,
Any
Rich.
questions from the committee?
No, I'll just say, and Malpe took down the two, both historic and dangerous trees at the entrance to the Lesser Playground. They're now gone,
Yeah.
but they're, it was a necessary thing, they did a good job, it was
You
just.
hate to see them go,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah.
mean, there's supposed to be a historic road and you're supposed to jump through hoops to take them down, but given the fact that that was such an obstruction when you came out and so dangerous, I'm
Right.
not gonna fight that battle.
No. All right. Item 9 is a review of suggested motions for the annual town meeting. These are motions that largely Barry wrote, turned over to Mark Tisdale, who's handling the work of putting the warrant together and presenting it to the Finance Committee. He has also worked extensively with Brian Winter on this, so I'd like to take a little bit of time and go through these and vote on these articles and motions. We can choose to do this each separately, or we can choose to do some in a package or all as a package. It's entirely up to the committee. There's, the one that I would like to pull out is the budget, because we may need to review that if there's enough change where I want to bring us back together. So we've had a good, thorough discussion on the budget already tonight. Do we have a motion to accept the budget report as it stands, with the understanding that we may in fact meet to vote some actuals again in the near future?
So moved.
Do these figures Barry has in here match?
No, they don't.
No, they're fictional numbers,
Okay.
for lack of a better way
They're
of,
from earlier
yeah,
drafts.
yeah.
So
They're
we are-
not from a more complete look.
So we are not voting those numbers, we are voting
Correct.
your numbers going in.
I would suggest that we vote to approve a CPC budget with the understanding that we do not have actuals yet, and we will likely need to meet with,
That was
again,
my
for
motion.
actuals.
That-
Yeah.
that-
Would meet again if there's anything radically different from what was.
What was presented by Michael tonight,
Well,
correct?
that, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, if we vote on this with inserting Michael's numbers that we just all heard,
Mhm.
then we're actually voting on something as opposed to just the form.
That's correct. And what we'll be looking for is advice from Michael, that Barry and I will be seeking as he gets it, as to whether there's a substantive enough change in the numbers that would require we meet again to vote on the
My
actuals.
motion is to approve the budget based on the numbers that were presented tonight,
Correct.
and that understanding that we may have to meet again if there's some changes.
And what I would like to do is I will send this to all the members, and you can compare that information with, presuming Michael says, hey, I don't think it's necessary to meet again to revote this. Everybody will get the numbers, and you'll each have an opportunity to decide for yourselves whether or not you want to revote it, or you're comfortable with it.
I'll second John's.
It is unlikely to change enough to need a meeting, but we need to hold that option open just in case.
I agree.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I think, you guys going up before the finance committee, it would be good to have a voted budget that we all agree on
Oh,
and.
yeah,
Yeah.
that carries a lot of weight
Yeah.
when we went through
Yeah.
the last year and
I
talked about
agree.
the process.
Well, this motion says we agree in substance to what was presented tonight, but if something materially changes, we'll meet again and review it.
And I'll be honest, from my position, I am apt to ask us all to come for a brief meeting to just review and hit those numbers again.
Yep.
That's my opinion, and I respect where Michael's coming from. It's a technical thing in my head. I want to be able to, with a straight face, stand before finance, say, yeah, this is what we voted on. Nothing to do with the hard work Michael has put into this. It's just a technical thing for me, but I'm happy to accept the motion to accept our budget as Michael has presented it, the numbers Michael's presented tonight, with the knowledge that we may in fact move forward. And
And
Dwight,
second.
you seconded it. Any further discussion before we take a vote on this one?
One question.
Please,
What does
Michael.
that do to this motion? Do we have a chance to update the numbers here, or do we just leave what's here since they know they're kind of placeholders anyway?
Oh, no, we
No,
update the
We're voting
number.
on your numbers.
Yeah.
going in.
So the numbers will have to be updated to match your treasurer's report.
Yeah, we're not voting on what's on the screen.
Correct.
We're
Right.
voting on the
The
numbers.
What
numbers
you gave
presented.
us.
Do you have the numbers based on your report?
Yeah, they're all in the report. We just went all, we can talk through Barry to make sure you get them right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
Well,
I guess
basically,
those numbers are
Michael,
in the report.
we're
Yeah,
looking to
and-
vote on the numbers you presented tonight, not what's in this article here before
My
us.
concern only, I'm guessing that what Mark has now is these numbers and a schedule for Mary Jane that doesn't agree with these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Correct.
we're voting on, and I just, if we can tie together a schedule in a thing with these numbers and get them to use that in the book tomorrow, that would be the ideal. 'Cause it's-
So, and I'm gonna be honest with you,
Yeah,
I would be perfectly okay not taking a vote on this
I
tonight.
think that's where I kind of have.
And just simply knowing, hey, you're gonna, and hopefully in a week or so, you'll have a
Okay.
final product.
I'm fine
We'll
with
call, it takes me 48 hours to get a meeting together, as long as we can all agree that, yeah, we need to meet for 15 minutes to approve the budget. I'm perfectly okay with that too. That
I'd be
eliminates a
more
lot of this
comfortable with that.
confusion.
Yeah,
Yeah, cause that's my point.
I know it is.
So
A
you would,
lot of moving pieces here.
Yeah.
I'm
What are we
comfortable
really
in
voting
total,
on?
but to Mark's point,
Do you wanna
I feel
withdraw
we
your
want everybody
motion?
to-
Yeah, I'll withdraw.
and I'll withdraw my second.
Then I think that's
The
what
other
we're gonna
piece
do.
is
okay.
They're closing that book, I think, tomorrow.
They are, but apparently I was told that we can still, that it's still in draft form until it gets handed to finance, yeah. So things will
So
still
maybe-
malleable.
That's kind of the last note I sent to MJ, just saying, okay, the questions I have on the CP2 can wait. But there are issues that we should agree on the budget. 'cause
We got
that's what's going forward.
$192,000 we can't explain right now.
Yeah. Okay.
192,000, give or take.
That's not part of the budget.
No, but it's still a problem.
But the budget is the priority, is what Michael
That
said.
number.
Yeah,
is in the budget.
I get what you're
I mean,
saying.
it is indirectly because it's part of the 95%.
It is.
There's a 2-year gap. The methodology has always been conservative enough that we'll be okay. But I'm not trying to downplay the idea that it would all be more comfortable if we had a piece of paper all tied out like that and said, this is what we know they would do.
I 100% agree, and
Doesn't
thank
say
you, John, for
temporary
your,
provisional, it says these are the numbers.
Flexibility
That's what I
on
was
that
unsure
one.
how they were handling this.
yeah, it just, yeah.
So we're gonna pretty definitely have another meeting.
We're gonna have another meeting as soon as Michael gets the final numbers for the budget, regardless of any of the other details he has and I have concerns about. Once we get a factual budget, I'll put an agenda together, I'll send out a Zoom to everybody,
Final approval of the budget.
you know, and we'll just do it online. It
I wanna
won't take
separate
long.
those two issues.
But it will
Some
take
of
that,
them are budget
that
related.
will take that gap time, you know, that we always have for when you announce your meeting, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. Everybody who might be watching this will be aware that we'll have an upcoming meeting very shortly just to approve the budget. And to be honest, as long as that's done by the 25th of February, that gives us a ton of time. Because they will insert, they know, the town knows what's going on.
I'll be pulling my hair out if I don't get answers from them by February 25th.
I get you.
That in itself is a project.
Yeah,
Yes,
That's a lot of hair to pull out.
Yeah, you got
Exactly.
plenty of hair to spare over there, like some of us.
I know.
Okay.
So the next article is the Hebrew Senior Life Affordable Senior Housing Project. I'm gonna read the article and then I'll ask you to read the motion, and I wanna know that this is a clean motion from you, just so you're aware. So the article reads, to see if the town will raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow or fund pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money to support the design, permitting, and construction by Hebrew Senior Life of a senior housing complex with 200 units of age-restricted affordable housing for seniors on Assessor's Map 043, Parcel 003, or to take any other action relative thereto. The request was made by the Community Preservation Committee, inserted by the Select Board on February 6, 2024, in the estimated cost of $2.3 million. The proposed motion is the piece that I want you to read, Barry, if you have the breath for it.
yeah. Before I say that, just the, one thing we haven't addressed as a committee, basically because we haven't done bonding for a while, and the last time we did it was 3 or 4 years ago, and we had, basically, the town accountant put it together. So this, one of the things that I did not think of at the time at our last meeting was that there'll be a cost to bonding. It's not a large cost, but there is a cost to it. And the point is to include that cost in the motion, so that doesn't come back to the town and
I
have to be
noticed you
paid for.
put that in there.
So it is now in there.
On that note, I think it's in the minutes that we're gonna review tonight too. I think we need to look at the motion we made in the meeting, because we were quite specific about not using the $1 million until a
Phase
certain
two.
point of time, which may not be consistent with the need for the bond. I'm okay, Barry and I, we talked about this, I'm okay with using the money for that, but we may just need to retweak that motion, which is in the minutes, I believe, because that's where I read it and said.
Well, I think
We wanna
that's,
take
it's
them-
covered in the new motion.
Yeah,
Uh,
it'll be covered in this motion, is my understanding.
I think we're creating a conflict between the motion town meeting approves and the motion that the CPC approved. Unless what you mean is, by us voting on this motion, we're kind of overriding the earlier, in which case I'm okay.
And we should state that.
I think that was my intent. So Barry did bring this up to me, and I said, rather than try and confuse things further, to Mike's credit, it would have. The intent tonight was we're voting the motion that will be going into the book, and it should be the clean one and override anything that we've done prior, presuming
Yes.
it meets the requirements of what we did prior. So if there's additional information here, such as the paying of the bond, the cost of the bond, that's okay, but we don't want to substantially change what we did initially. And I think this accomplishes that.
Right, and what I've changed is that the $1 million cash, which we had said was available solely for the construction of phase two, is now available not only for the construction of phase two, but for the bonding for phase one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
The
okay with the
cost
way
of
it's
the
worded.
bonding. only.
I'm sorry, the
Yes.
cost
I
of the
think
bonding.
the
Yes.
day after Barry explained to me where he was going with that, I read the minutes and said, okay, these minutes kind of conflict with what we just said we want to do. But as long as we consider this the overriding motion, then I'm good.
We will say that this supersedes the previous motion.
Yeah.
And is everybody okay
Okay,
with
And I can read it.
the intent of that?
I
Yeah,
can
why don't you read it
Let
first?
me read it first. Proposed motion, that the town vote pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to borrow from Stoughton Community Preservation Fund anticipated local revenue for a bond term of not less than 20, no more than 25 years, the amount of $1,300,000, and that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, be authorized to borrow said sum as authorized under the Community Preservation Program pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44B, Section 11, and to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund undesignated fund balance the sum of $1 million to support the design, permitting, and construction by Hebrew Senior Life of a senior housing complex with 200 units of age-restricted affordable housing for seniors on Assessor's Map 043, Parcel 003. The amount of $1,300,000 shall be available for Phase 1. The remaining $1 million shall be available for the cost of bonding and for the construction of Phase 2. And provided further that such support is subject to and contingent upon construction of Phase 1 beginning within 3 years of town meeting approval and Phase 2 construction beginning within 5 years of town meeting approval. And to authorize the Community Preservation Committee and the Select Board to submit on behalf of the town any and all applications deemed necessary for grants and/or reimbursements from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or the United States under any state or federal programs in any way connected with the scope of this article. Said gifts or grants to be deposited in the undesignated Community Preservation Fund balance, and to authorize the Select Board to enter into all agreements and execute any and all instruments as may be necessary to effectuate said project.
Yeah, I have one question about that. I don't know that there's gonna be any grants or other funds coming in, but I suspect there are, because this is a very well-known group and they get whatever support they can get. If the grants that come in exceed 1.3 million because they get a $5 million grant from HUD, we cannot ask for that whole $5 million to go into the undesignated fund.
Furthermore, I do not believe we're anticipating any of this money be returned to us.
Right.
No, but I'm just cautioning that the way it's worded, it's not unlikely that those folks are getting grants for housing from a bunch of agencies.
No, that is a good point, and we know already that they are getting federal and state money.
That's correct.
And,
As a matter of fact, the brunt of the financing is coming through that way.
yeah, so,
I'm not sure we can make a claim to those grants, but
I agree. I don't wanna make a claim for them. That wasn't the intent of this. The intent of this was to show a true and full support
right.
through the CPC of the town of this project, financial support.
because if they get those grants, it's going to defray the cost, it's not gonna make the cost less. In other words, they can't take the grant and give it back to us.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit concerned about that piece of it, that,
Is this implying that it's giving
I mean, I
the
would just make that
CPA and
part-
select board approval to go for grants, and those grants are the ones being referred to?
meaning could we offset this cost through grants?
Well, yeah, we're saying.
It's not our project.
No, but it says, doesn't know what the wording says, to authorize the CPA and select board to submit on behalf of the town any and all applications deemed necessary for grants and or reimbursements from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That, I guess that means we're not applying for the grants, but we would put paperwork in to support them?
I read that if they need to apply and they need information from us,
From us.
this authorizes us and the select board to give them that information.
Not that we would be applying for the grants per se ourselves.
No,
Well-
listen, I don't think the town is going to apply for grants. I think we are the town.
Well, we know the town is not applying for granting
Yeah.
for this
So
project.
it'll be a federal or a charitable organization that gives the grants, and they're not gonna wanna give a grant and have it go to the CPC. They're gonna wanna give a grant to go to the project.
Sure.
let me address that. As I'm reading it again, what I'm reading is that if we, or the select board, submit an application for a grant or reimbursement, then that money can come back to the Community Preservation Committee. But I don't anticipate that being the case. There is other funding.
Where
We've
did
got
me
that
just-
wording come from?
from
Well,
town
let me
council.
ask you this. Here's a hypothetical that might work. There's a number of different housing organizations, MAPC, you know, there's probably a dozen of them that I can't think of any of the acronyms right now, but what if the town was to, on behalf of the project, apply for $1 million grant to one of these agencies and got that $1 million? Does this state that that $1 million would be replenished back into the community
I
preservation
think that
account?
is what it says, but it doesn't apply to money that Hebrew Senior Life is applying directly to HUD or
But
the
if the
state.
town says, hey, we're gonna apply to MAPC, and it wouldn't happen through MAPC because they don't have $1 million to give, but let's just, for hypothetical.
Whatever it is.
They say, we're concerned about, you know, we put out 2.3, we think we can recoup $1 million of this. They apply for grant and they get it. That grant money would come back to us, correct?
That's what this says,
That's
yes.
what we're trying to capture.
I mean, yes, I'm sorry, say that again?
That's exactly what we're trying to capture, so that
Right.
the town couldn't apply and take the $1 million and put it in the general fund.
Correct.
I think if it's absolutely clear that we're talking about the grant that sends money directly to the town, but if the grant basically goes to the construction of the project,
What if it's an infrastructure grant? That's a good point.
yeah, I mean, I have problems with that. I think that could be a stopping point for the grantee. I don't think they could agree with that.
Well, let me understand. So if, let's say the town applies for an infrastructure grant.
And it's a
connected-
hypothetical, so let's be clear on that.
Right. So it says, in any way connected with the scope of this article. So in other words, if there's an infrastructure grant to provide any utility, for example,
Yeah,
to the project.
they have to dig up the state highway to, put in a sewer or something like that, which is going to happen.
But if the town incurs costs to do that, why
And they
wouldn't
get
the
grant
town
money.
get that grant? Why would that grant, if the town had to
Right.
spend money to do something, was able to grant that money
Right.
town should get.
but we wouldn't get it.
Right, which was apart from the part we had funded of the actual project.
So our funding is specific to design and construction.
Yes.
I actually don't like the wording to support the design, permitting, and construction. I would prefer it to say to support the construction by Hebrew Senior Life. In my opinion, that was the spirit of what we did. We're supporting solely the construction. We're not supporting permitting, and we're not supporting design. We're supporting actual here, and that's
I don't
construction.
agree with that. We're supporting project cost.
We have in the past, but in this case here, we tie phase two specifically to construction. Now, I understand it's phase two, but what's to say they don't design phase one and then use our money to design phase two?
The only mention we made of construction is that construction had to start within so much time.
Right, I don't think
True.
we limited the funding we're giving to
True.
construction only.
I do believe that this is a project grant, not a
Yeah,
construction.
and I'm okay with it, although that, I would prefer to see the money go to construction. But it is what it is. I'm not gonna fight over that bit of it. I was fine with everything else until we got to within 5 years of town meeting approval, and then it got foggy for me.
Well, just to go to John Morton's point, it would be, when the money coming back would only be applicable to, as it says in the last line, 3 or 4 lines up from the bottom, said gifts or grants. In other words, grants that are applied for by us, not by Hebrew Senior Life.
Yes, I think that's what it says.
It does say that. I agree with that.
Yeah,
Oh, it does say that.
it does say, it says said grants or gifts,
Said grants,
referring
yeah.
to authorizing the CPC and the select board to submit
Correct.
applications. So
So
when
it would
the
be up
CPC
to
when
us
if
or
the
the
CPC or the
select
select
board.
board submitted an application for funding connected to this project,
And that I'm okay with.
then it would come back to us. But
Right,
not,
but,
not
I
the
mean,
funding that's
given
already
the
secured
caveat
by
too, if the town
project.
applies, but it's for infrastructure, that
Well,
doesn't come
but
back
there
to us.
isn't necessarily a caveat there, no.
But-
All it says is if we're funding a project, which John just clearly stated, we are, and I agree with that statement, although it niggles at me a little bit. I agree that that was the spirit of what we were doing, even though I felt construction would have been the better place for it. At the end of the day, if either of us apply for grant money to replenish this,
Well,
Right, but I'm just saying, I thought we already agreed, if the town applies for a grant and gets it, that improves the infrastructure, and that's not what we put it in for, we don't get that money back.
but infrastructure is a part of the project, is it not?
Yes, but it's not community
Where's the
preservation.
language relating to the project? If
Mm-hmm.
we apply for a grant relating to the project, if it's an infrastructure grant, it shouldn't come back to us.
No, and I wouldn't fight the select board on that. If they sought a grant for that, that's not kind of what we're doing.
But we have to say what we intend.
Correct.
Not what we might do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's not about our thoughts in this room.
And I
Said
guarantee you.
gifts
when
or
we come
grants
out-
to be deposited in the undesignated community preservation fund balance.
Which tells me if they get grant money, it comes back to us.
Right, that's what it
Yeah.
does say that, but I'm questioning if we really want to acknowledge the exception of this grant that may not get about infrastructure, which if the town gets a grant to do infrastructure, well, I mean, they would spend that, okay, they get the grant and they would spend it, so wouldn't be anything to come back to us anyway, but I,
It shouldn't come back to us because the town would spend the money. on it.
right.
But we don't say that.
I think that we shouldn't talk about grants coming back to us in any dimension. I mean, it's the right thought, but it's too complex, I think.
Is this, Barry, to you, this is a motion that Brian Winter approved of, correct? He vetted this. I guess the fundamental question is do we trust our town council to have done this properly? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, you are, but I'm not. So,
I speak English.
yeah, you do. But I mean, I understand from the way your mind works, why you're looking at it the way you are, and I don't disagree. We should say what we mean.
Right.
in plain terms.
It's supposed to authorize us and the select board to submit on behalf of the town any and all applications deemed necessary for grants and or reimbursements under the state, et cetera, et cetera.
No, but the
Said gifts or
incentives-
grants to be deposited in the undesignated
The
community.
et cetera is relating to the project, isn't it?
It says to be deposited in the undesignated, it doesn't say can be, it says to be.
Deemed necessary for grants and or.
Well, it
reimbursements
means if we get
in any
$3
way
million,
connected with the-
2.3 comes back into our
In
account.
any way
Could we
connected
add
with the
in
scope of the
if
article.
appropriate?
Yeah, within the scope of the area.
Does that make it worse? or
I
better?
would think changing the word to can would clarify it enough where there's an option left on the table, although another committee could say, well, what about us, you know?
May.
May be deposited.
May.
Yeah, May would be.
No, but that, then it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything
No, that
substantive.
doesn't mean
This is
anything.
a situation different, for example, from the dog park, where we know that if there is a grant, it's going to go directly to the cost of the dog park, and therefore, we should get what we don't spend back. It's not a question.
Well, it might depend upon the timing of the grant.
What's that?
It might depend upon the timing of the grant.
Yes,
If it's a
you might have
reimbursement.
already spent it, and we'll get reimbursed.
Right.
But here, it's different. I mean, I think we've got a.
Could you say said gifts or grants? Could you say a portion of said gifts or grants to be deposited into the undesignated account? I mean, how do you really word that?
You know, I may be in a minority here, but, and I don't know if Brian knows about grants that might be available out there. So I would say if we can have Barry just convey that we had some concerns about this section, but we're trusting him, and unless, you know, I personally, I think it leaves doors open that, I mean, even in town meeting, we could say, we don't know of any gifts or grants we could apply for,
But that doesn't mean they're
but we
not out
wanted
there.
to leave the door open.
I think if we didn't mention it in the article, in the motion, it wouldn't even come up at town meeting. I mean, I think by mentioning it.
So how do you take it out? Do you take out from said gifts or grants to be deposited in the undesignated account at that point, or?
The whole notion of talking about that if we apply for a grant or the town applies for a grant.
But that would mean, well, if we didn't have it in there, so if it did happen, we would have never given any hint that we thought we were gonna get any of that money back.
That's correct, but is it gonna happen? Are you gonna write a grant?
And what happens if
Well,
they do write a grant?
If it doesn't
The
happen,
town.
it doesn't matter, but just imagining a scenario where a lot of money came in and covered from the town did, and some of it was possibly affected the CPC money, is there a possibility we'd get some of it back out of the dog park? I mean,
So part of my
how do we
struggle
leave
with
that
this,
possibility open? That's,
if you read the note, and I don't disagree with what anybody's saying, but a big part of my struggle with this is we are 2.3% roughly of this project. It's a $101 million project. I feel at least this committee in its entirety voted to support community housing for the elderly in an affordable manner to the tune of $2.3 million, or $11,500 per unit. I'm not sure any of this language is helping that, which was the intent of what we wanted to do with this.
I agree, and we certainly didn't talk about getting money back.
No, we didn't.
But isn't that not
We could
gonna-
do it tonight.
To take it all out.
I would take out the language that deals with grants and at all.
So stop it at phase 2 construction beginning within 5 years of town meeting approval.
Yes.
Boom.
But do they need the
That's
town
a good
or
question.
CPC to provide something for a grant? And if we don't, say, we don't have the authority to give them that information. I read that to think of that as opposed to actually having
That's
money back.
why I'm in favor of Barry asking the question, conveying our concern, that this seems to be a bit of a red herring, that,
So, and I'm not trying to shorten tonight, we'll do what we have to get this done, but this may be another one where
Yeah.
I have Barry go back and revisit this and make some clarification, and please express to Brian what this committee's concerns are.
Yep.
The intent of this was to give $2.3 million toward community housing specifically. How is this going to affect what we want to do? And bring up John's concerns, Michael, everybody's concerns about how this language will play. If we can get a clear and concise answer that we need this language because the town intends to do blank,
Yeah, and this is for the motion.
fine,
not
but
the
let's
article.
separate us out of it somehow.
This is for the motion, not for the article, so we have.
But we vote the motion, and we do have time.
But, or is this some kind of?
The article is what it is now. It's in the book.
This language, is this boilerplate language? I mean, where
I
did
don't
this
know.
language come
The
from?
language came from, well, part of it is, it's a combination of what I drew up and what town council drew up. The part we're talking about now, the very last bit of it, is from town council.
Town
The
council.
town council took what you did and added.
And added
so-
this
so
to it.
effectively, it all came from town council. Barry helped initiate.
Well, he wrote the first half of it, and
Yeah,
then,
but they didn't just take it and use it. Brian did what he
But
thought
is that,
needed to be
is
done.
this some kind of boilerplate fail-safe position that they have tended to use so that money can come back to CPC when it's there?
I don't know, but
I
I
think
think
it is
it's,
because, okay, there was some confusion when town council worked on this, and he thought, that I won't even say which one it is at this point, one of the other articles that we approved, that we are recommending was supposed to be bonded, which it isn't. And he put this same language into that motion as well.
it was a clerical error, and it was caught.
So I say that by way of answering Dwight's question, is it boilerplate? And that tends to lead me to think that it was.
It's just a lot of
But in
language
your
for a
conversation,
very
now,
clear
we
intent.
struggled, which likely means town meeting's gonna.
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah, so here's what I intend to ask, and I'm open to other suggestions. Number one, what is the purpose of this language of that last?
From where to where?
The grant language.
The language that starts after,
And to
town,
authorize.
after 5 years of town meeting approval,
Yes,
where it starts and to authorize, that part till the end of the, what's the purpose of that language? And what would it change to remove it?
and I think you should say what our concerns are, that we know there will be grants, and there could be infrastructure grants for the town that really don't relate to the construction. And those grants will be money spent by the town, so it shouldn't come back to the CPA, it seems to me.
Well,
Yeah.
unless they're part of the design, permitting, and construction, they wouldn't be connected with the scope of this article.
I don't agree. With the
I think it's a project as a whole. We've been through this.
Yeah, and you may have to have the town put a road cut or a curb cut or something in.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
adding as appropriate is just such a fudge I mean,
Yeah.
add deposited as appropriate.
What does
It gives
that
you-
mean?
Well, yeah, it just means that the possibility of that being something we thought about was there. If some situation arose, we really did want to get the money because we thought it was fair for us to get it, we'd have that language implying that something said we had a possible chance to claw it back, given a certain scenario.
Lawyers love that kind of ambiguity.
Yeah.
It gives them a nice law.
Smooth path to confusion.
So I will say
Well-
that the CPC is concerned that that section is confusing and
But I'm just saying to
possibly
the extent that does that protect us, just imagine the fact that a lot of money came in, more than they thought from a lot of grants, and we put that money out there, and we just said, oh, well, we gave the money, it's gone, we're not, never gonna get it. This would, as appropriate, give us the possibility of saying, well, given the fact that all this other money came in, we think we should get, I'm simplifying, our, $400,000 back, or whatever.
But the language doesn't say that. The language says that
Correct.
if the town
Correct.
submits a grant.
And that's where my struggle is.
right, this is the town or us
Yeah.
putting in for a grant.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
town,
well,
right.
And the other
Oh.
question I have is, should it be, we should obviously limit it to the cost of the article. If we get $4 million from a grant for infrastructure. Is that, you know what I'm saying?
I
Yeah,
do.
You know what you're saying.
We made money.
Well, maybe we should limit it then.
That was my first comment. The
Yeah.
second
Good
comment
investment.
was,
Yeah.
we shouldn't take money that the town has spent to
Into
make
the
the
CBA.
project work.
Correct.
Give it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's fair to the town either.
I don't know if it's
so-
even legal for that.
No.
matter.
No, that's correct.
But that's what we're saying, and this has to go before bond council, so it should pass the sniff
Yeah, let's-
test
It
appropriately.
has gone before bond council, and bond council had no objection to
I
this part.
don't think this went before bond.
As
When did it
appropriate.
go before bond council?
Brian told me it did when I talked to him yesterday.
Really?
Well,
That's interesting.
I think it's death to this thing, if
Yeah.
you wanna know the truth.
Yep.
So I think we gotta be very careful.
Death because who's gonna kill it because of it?
Well, who's.
People are gonna say, I don't even understand it.
They don't, yeah, you did.
Oh, so they never vote on things they don't understand? Is that policy?
Well, you don't wanna-
They clearly do,
You
but,
want to walk in with something that's not
yeah,
clear,
I agree.
knowing that it might
Depends on
not
what
be.
night
I
the
get-
town meeting is.
Right, but,
Yeah,
okay,
I-
I'm just trying to think why,
We should not vote on something that's not clear.
I agree.
as
We're
appropriate.
we're gonna revisit it. Hopefully, we
I mean,
don't
We
have
deserve
any
an
others, but.
explanation for all that
Yeah.
added
Yeah.
language.
Yeah, so again, just to reiterate, I'm gonna ask what the purpose of that language is, starting from the words and
Mhm.
authorize the CPC. I'm going to say, what would it change or affect to remove it? And I'm gonna say that the CPC is concerned that that section would be confusing and unnecessary when we go before town meeting,
For the following.
Some of the
reasons.
CPs.
For the following reasons.
Yeah,
for the following reasons.
I mean, and the reasons are, we would be getting money that probably isn't ours to get. It's the town's money if it's an infrastructure project, or if, you know, and
Well, we don't know that.
But that's why, as appropriate, I know it's a fudge word, but that, obviously it was infrastructure money, we didn't deserve it, we wouldn't get it, but if it was house straight
But according to
housing,
this, another committee could say, hey, that's our money.
public housing,
as appropriate is a key word for a lawsuit
okay, but that we would bring.
that anybody.
I would just say all I'm saying would give
John has a
us
good
the
point.
option, under the slim possibility, but possibility that we, some other, thought it was fair to claw back some money because just given the overall thing. And it would be appropriate in that case to do it, but, I mean, I'm not going to the wall.
Appropriate is subjective.
Yes, it is, but
Yeah.
it just opens a gray area that there is such a thing as an say what, there is an appropriate time you could get it back.
This says the Community Preservation Committee and the Select Board, so they
Mhm.
couldn't apply for it without us.
Oh, they could apply for
No,
it.
it doesn't say and/or, it
No,
says
it's
and.
saying authorize both.
Yeah, it's authorizing us
Say yes.
both.
Authorize both to submit on
And, yeah,
behalf of the town.
so if we wouldn't go along with it,
We're both authorized to submit it.
So
Doesn't say we
theoretically,
have
we
to
could,
submit it
we could
together.
both
No.
submit an
it
application to the
authorized
same
both
grant.
of us, not
John, in-
and/or. It
John,
doesn't say
in
and/or.
Contracts 101 in law school, the first thing they teach you is if it says Joe, A and B, it can be interpreted to mean A or B.
Really?
Yeah, if A and B can do it, then maybe A or B could do it.
Huh.
They're both authorized, not that they have to act in concert, but they're both authorized.
That's
Right.
Unless it's explicitly saying both must, or,
Both must.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's why we're not lawyers. It's why you
how
go
many
and
dollars
play
an
with
hour,
animals.
what's our billable hours?
I hope you still play with animals. Probably not often enough. All right, we're gonna table this
So
until
we'll table
our-
this one
I
as
have
well.
another question on this one.
Yes.
Mhm.
I struggle with the beginning to borrow from Stoughton Community Preservation Fund anticipated local revenue.
That means they have to pay it back. Borrow means you pay it back, right?
Yeah, but we're borrowing, I mean, the town is gonna borrow the money,
Right,
and we're gonna pay the cost of that borrowing from the Community Preservation Fund.
and we're not doing it from anticipated local revenue, we're doing it from resource that we have.
No, but we
No,
But it's
not for
limited
the
to-
bond.
But it's,
Well, we can
I
be,
don't
sure.
recall how things were written for bonds, and I know
I
maybe
think
less.
that's consistent with the statute. I mean,
Yeah.
That you
okay,
say
we're
borrow, the town
limited to-
borrows the money, even though it's, I mean, Yeah, it's just a term.
We
you
are
use, not
limited
take
to
the
local
money.
revenues.
I have to go to the
Statute says you can
bathroom.
borrow
Carry
against
on.
the anticipated funds.
Correct.
If we run out of funds, then the town has to pay, has to
Right,
pay.
and it's limited to, we can only borrow from what's anticipated local revenue,
That's
not
correct.
all the funds we have.
Right.
That's correct.
Does not include state
I
funds.
think
So
it is
there's
standard
one more
language.
comment I would like you to put in there, question, it is, to me, this is, could perhaps be, given what we know at this point, considered disingenuous. Almost
that last-
as if
that
we're
last
trying to
phrase you're
convince
talking
town
about?
meeting, yes, as if we're trying to convince town meeting, we might get this back, so. both
Yeah, I
parties.
agree with you.
I agree with you too.
We actually had a very clear path to a grant, never a promise on the Capen project, but certainly a clear path that we could in fact
Right.
receive
That
grant
was-
monies
that
in
was not
return.
disingenuous.
It was not, we were very transparent about that. This suggests the
That
same
we think,
process, yet we have no intention nor path to accomplish it. There's nobody saying,
No,
hey, I think I can get $2 million here or $1.5 million in grant money for community housing. We're straight out putting this out. It's the whole reason we put it in as 2.3 and not $1.3 million this year and another $1 million next. We want it to be fully transparent, so I agree with John.
By the
There
same-
is no path for grant money, as
That we
far as
know
I'm
of.
concerned, that we know of.
Yeah, now if he knows of something, you know, they are
Well,
throwing
you
a
gotta
lot of
tell
money
us
out
that.
there for housing.
Right,
We should be told,
yeah.
yeah.
And have an opportunity to decide whether or not we want that money in return.
Okay,
Mark, that first sentence, to borrow, that word is incorrect. We're not lending it to them, we're gifting it to them.
no,
No, we have to bond the money, that's what that means. We're gonna
we're
borrow.
borrowing it.
We're
as opposed
borrowing
to
the money.
spending it from
I thought
cash.
that was covered further down with the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, be authorized to borrow said sum. To me, that's the borrowing that's gonna take place. It's that first borrow.
Well, maybe you wanna say to borrow, that the community preservation, basically, the town can borrow to be refunded, to be paid from
From.
anticipated risk.
That seems more logical to me.
Yeah,
Can you
well,
go
that's the
back and
way it
look at the
works.
last bonded article we
But
did,
if the
Barry?
town council
And see
says
if there's
that,
language
Yeah,
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that would have been by a different town council, but yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Let's just see if the language
Okay,
matches.
but before
If
we,
it's
Yeah, I tried, I couldn't
boilerplate,
find any warrant.
yeah.
before we leave this and table it, the substantive change that I've made, which I wanted to make sure the committee is on board for before we leave this, is that we're agreeing that the cost of bonding comes out of the cash part of this
Yes,
article.
Yes.
Okay, can we take a vote on that?
yes,
Yeah, I'll make
Oh.
a motion.
Okay,
You get a second?
I second it.
Okay.
okay.
And this is just that
This is
we'll be
just-
paying the cost of bonding out of the cash portion of this. Any discussion? Hearing nothing by roll call. Dwight?
Yes.
Rich? Yes. John Morton?
Yes,
Michael?
Yes.
John Linehan?
Yes.
Don Brady?
yes,
Larice? Did she fall asleep? Larice?
it's all about me.
Not hearing from Larice. Olabumney appears not to be with us. Olabumney, are you still with us?
No.
No, I didn't see her on. The chair votes yes.
So that's, is anybody here haven't voted?
I'm sorry?
Everyone here has
We
voted.
all voted.
Okay.
We've all
All right,
voted.
so that's seven to nothing on
Yeah.
that one. And,
Yeah, no, I don't have Larice on.
okay, and a motion to table?
And then, yeah, I'd like a motion. Do we need a motion to table?
No, I guess you can do
I
that.
I'm gonna table it until our next meeting, which will be before our March meeting.
So we will have another meeting.
And
We're gonna have another meeting now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still,
I think that was a foregone conclusion when we decided to table the budget for the purposes of clarity.
Yeah.
All right, next item
Okay, let me-
is
Let me go. Those were the tough ones.
the renovation of the town-owned barn on West Street.
Right.
The-
Just before we leave this completely, I did adjust the wording in the explanation so that it also covers the cost of bonding.
And this will be, the Hebrew Senior Life motion will be something that will be circulated to all members prior so that we should have a pretty simple meeting on our hands. And if we don't, we need to know that, you know, it's okay to say, no, I have a problem with this, but it would be very helpful to be able to work that out ahead of time. Renovation of town-owned barn on West Street. The article reads, to see if the town will raise and appropriate transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow or fund pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money to fund the renovation of the barn on the property at Assessor's Map 37, Parcel 34, or to take any other action relative thereto, requested by,
You scroll down to
why would this be requested by the Recreation Department?
Well, that's why I changed it to the Stoughton Historical.
Thank
Commission.
you. It was indeed.
Yes, that was a
And
clerical
inserted
error.
by
Historical
the Select
Commission.
Board on February 6, 2024. The estimated cost is $230,000. You want to read the motion, or you want me to?
I'll do it. That the town vote pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Preservation Reserve Account the sum of $230,000 to fund the renovation of the barn on the property at Assessor's Map 37, Parcel 34.
And this was recommended as a cash article by the Community Preservation Committee by a vote of 8-0.
Now, just what are you doing to this barn? I mean, I'm just saying, if is that what people are gonna say? Just what does this renovation mean? Is he following?
That's
the-
up to you.
Well, no,
I-
if we go down further, there are explanatory notes.
Fix it up.
This project is the next step in the process begun at an previous annual town meeting where a consultant's evaluation was authorized in order to determine the cost of the renovation. That evaluation was done, and this article is the result.
It's
You're
just
gonna
saying,
have to
yeah,
present,
read.
these
here-
are the
here things they
findings.
recommended and.
These are the things that were
Right, and it's
recommended.
complicated 'cause there's more
The
stuff
question that's
recommended
gonna
that can
come
all
up
be
is,
done, but
what are
it's
we gonna use it for?
some of this is gonna be done and,
That's the question.
So, you're
What?
absolutely right, John. The question is, what are we gonna use it for? The, answer is multifaceted and currently malleable. We want to use the property as an agricultural center. To what degree, we're not sure. That is dependent on the actions taken by the Conservation Commission. And the town, correct, in the town as a whole.
Keep in mind, the Conservation Commission does not control the barn. The board-
No, they control the land which the barn is critical to, and it's a little bit of a trick, I agree. We also would like to see the barn host a museum of sorts for agricultural use, an Aggie museum. And I think that's a good place for the community gardens, or at least the beginnings of the community gardens. So those would be active, and again, we're supporting and maintaining a building, not maintaining, but we're renovating a building that is in danger of collapsing. It is a historic item of significance to the town. It
It
is
also memorializes the historic agricultural.
history of the
basis
town.
for-
Yep.
for this.
now whether or not we wanna use the term that we use for the train stations of zip it up. I mean, this is sort of a beginning process to keep it from deteriorating. It is not giving us a finished product. I mean, this is,
But it is giving us a usable
Yes,
building,
and
so
it's
we
keeping
need
it
to be
from-
careful with that.
yes, exactly, so.
Yes,
that's
you
why-
do.
So that, yeah.
Because they're not gonna wanna hear, this is never gonna end. This gives us a usable building.
That's correct.
If the Conservation Commission makes a decision to lease the land to a grower, a farmer of sorts, then the barn could be utilized as a support structure for that, yes. for
Yes,
that
and
business.
with the current, and I'm thinking out loud, with the current renovations, it would be amenable to being a simple farm museum where some
Correct.
simple machinery from Stoughton's past were put in there for people to go observe it. It's not a finished, secure place, but it would be.
But it
place you
gives
could
us the opportunity to
store
build a program that will educate the general public and particularly the residents of
Could be
Stoughton.
the Center for Agricultural Uses and History.
Sure,
activity.
yes.
And gatherings. I mean,
I thought you were gonna say we'll have a hoedown.
We can have a hoedown. You paying?
Well, so Dwight, would it be fair to say that the purpose of the article is to basically keep the barn from to preserve the barn, to keep it from falling down and to allow it to be used for whatever use the
Yes,
town
and,
comes
and
up
get it to a point where
be
some
used.
uses can be, it could serve some uses, and we've made a list
It
of
will
what they are.
serve some uses, I think is a better way to say it. Because it will, in fact, that's the intent of this.
Dwight, one of the things you can play on is we paid good money for that property. It was not gifted to the town. And so the town has an obligation to maintain the structure.
That's not a bad argument.
I disagree. We didn't buy it for the barn,
No, we didn't.
and it can become a, you know. like-
Albatross? Is that-
Yes.
yeah.
I think we stick to what we've come up to point.
I'm not
is
gonna
it
be
now?
mentioning albatross, that's a limit.
No, don't
I'm
mention
just trying to
albatross.
fill in his blank there, but yeah, I mean, yes, and that's what people are going to
You know,
object to it
albatrosses
on that,
can fly for weeks without landing,
yes.
Yeah.
sleep while they're flying.
And
That's
you don't wanna
kinda
shoot
awesome.
them either, or bad things happen to you.
If there are no concerns with that article, I'd like to
Yeah, we
continue
should-
on
yeah,
and then vote them as a
yeah.
package if we can. If
Okay.
we run into another hiccup, we'll stop and
Yep.
vote the priors.
Yep, there's no change to the next article. The motion reflects the article.
So the article is for a historic site signs, Group 2, and it reads, to see if the town will raise an appropriate transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow, or fund pursuant to general law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money for the purchase and installation of 15 historic site signs in Stoughton, or take any other action relative thereto. This was requested by the Stoughton Historical Commission, inserted by the Select Board on the 6th of February 2024, and the estimated cost is $17,000 even.
Yeah, actually, we're reviewing the motions. The articles are already in place and have already
True,
been
so
placed
read
on
the
warrant.
motion.
So the motion
Well,
is,
I mean, do we, I don't wanna say, I think we're okay with it, but I mean, but you can read it, but I think this is a non-controversial one, and
I think
there's
so.
nothing to add, and I don't think there's anything to talk about.
No, but for the sake of transparency, I want to read the motion.
okay.
I have a question. Does the sum of $17,000 also include the labor to install it?
Yeah.
That has been well, no, it include, that has been supplied by the town
Okay.
recently, so that.
It says purchase and installation.
Well, CO Graphics makes the plate, the metal plate that supports it. But recently, we've had members of the town, DPW, actually put it in the ground, I believe.
However, this article does support,
But the cost has
Purchasing
been,
and
about
installation.
$1,000 a pop.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at that. It's like $1,133
Yeah,
per
it's
sign.
gotta
Is that
cover
reasonable?
installation.
I'm not,
It
That's how
does.
we did the other ones, yeah, because given the plate.
it states
the metal
that it does.
Thing, and, what they charge for creating that solid metal base, I mean, which is,
oh, the stand itself,
yeah, I mean, which is a, very heavy thing.
yeah.
Not $1,000 worth of steel, but, yeah.
Those signs are wonderful, by the way.
Yeah, they
And
are.
they also come with some photographs too, don't they?
Yeah, that's why the person who's gonna do it, the 3-year limit, he'll be struggling with that, because the person will be getting those signs and writing the, commentary and making them all fit together and proofreading going back and forth is.
But remember,
Well,
the
we can change
process
the
has
grant
to
agreement
start,
to
well,
accommodate that.
I don't know, so the process has to start within 3 years. It can't sit without spending money for more than 3 years. However, once money starts to get spent,
Right. And I
much
should-
like the vital records that we approve for the town clerk's office, that will be a rolling or ongoing process, and we knew that going in.
And short of,
We can also rescind if it's 20 years later and they still
Sure.
haven't done signs.
If it's 5 years later and they haven't done anything,
Yeah, and I'll
if
be-
it's 3 years and they haven't touched
When
it,
you do your
it gets
presentation,
rescinded automatically by
have a slide
sunset.
That shows a few of the ones that are already
Unless we
existing in town.
yeah,
Unless we choose to extend it, that's correct.
yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Not an absolute deadline, and it has to be done.
Do you know?
No, it's to ensure that projects keep moving.
What
that was the
The
intent
question
of
is
it.
asked,
It
what-
wasn't to
Yeah,
put
I have a
undue
list of the
burdens on them.
places that are, including the Atkinson Avenue
You wanna
parking
read
lot
them?
conservation.
Can we just have them read the motion?
Okay, that the town vote pursuant to General Law 44, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Preservation Account the sum of $17,000 for the purchase and installation of 15 historic site signs in Stoughton.
We recommended this as a cash article. CPC did as, at a vote of 8-0.
Excellent.
No questions about it, we're gonna move on to the next one. Article, for the renovation of Marks Field
Yeah, that's-
construction
You've actually
phase.
got an old copy that you're reading off of.
This was the latest one I pulled up,
Okay.
but, to see if the town will raise and appropriate, oh, there's actual numbers on these now.
Well, you have actual numbers too.
No, I have double X.
Oh, the actual article numbers, yes, yes.
This is Article 41, I
41,
guess.
yep.
To see if the town will raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow, or fund pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money to fund the construction phase of the renovation of Marks Field, or to take any other action relative thereto, requested by Stoughton Youth Lacrosse, otherwise known as Stolax, inserted by the Select Board on the 6th of February, 2024, and the estimated cost is $518,000. Barry, the motion?
Yep. Proposed motion that the town vote pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund undesignated fund balance, the sum of $518,000 to fund the construction phase of the renovation of Marks Field.
And this was recommended as a cash article by the CPC with a vote of 8-0. Any questions or comments on this one?
I'd say it's a good thing that we're not Essex, because it would be Excellence.
Wow, okay. I'm glad we're not.
You've been waiting to do that all night.
I guess he has, yep.
All right,
The field would be a mess.
It would be a horrible mess.
all right.
Article
All right,
42.
and,
wants
and
peace
this one,
going
in discussion with town council, it originally had said about rescinding
Okay,
$145,000 that was approved last year, and we decided that because town council was led to believe that meant that we had borrowed it. I said, well, we hadn't borrowed it, it was cash article 2, so I said, what if we change it to cancel instead of rescind? So that's what we did. Change everywhere it had said rescind, it now says cancel.
Now, traditionally, by precedent, we have rescinded monies that
Right.
have not been spent.
Right, including cash.
I don't know if we've rescinded cash or not.
I don't think we have.
I can't honestly answer that, Barry, you could look into that.
I don't
but-
think we ever have. I think we have had projects that didn't happen that we've canceled because they didn't
And
happen.
in this case, this project did not happen.
Right, and this is one of them.
So it was why I agreed with the word it was bothering me, but I says, okay.
Rescind to me usually conjures up borrowing.
Right.
Rescind the authority to borrow.
And that was town council's argument, if I'm being fair. Barry agreed, they worked this out, I begrudgingly accepted the word cancellation. Because again, our precedent states we rescind the money generally, but I'm not arguing with council or Barry on this one. Barry felt very confident that the word cancellation was appropriate.
And the,
Town council agreed, obviously, so I wasn't, I felt comfortable with those expertise thoughts.
and this is an unusual article because we're doing two things. We're canceling last year's approval, and we're approving a new project for $241,000. What I've done is showing that the estimated net cost after the cancellation will only be $96,000. So people don't get the idea of, well, we approved $145,000 last year, and now we're giving him another $241,000, what gives with that? This is to make it totally transparent and above board that the net new cost is $96,000.
But I believe that during presentation, we have to focus on the fact that the new project is costing $241,000.
Correct, and that's what needs to be authorized.
We had previously authorized 145, and that's coming off, but you know, at the end of the day, can you scroll up a little so I can see the top of this article? Thank you. So I'll read the article. To see if the town will vote to cancel authorization for the expenditure of $145,000 for lighting at Miller Field and scoreboard replacements at Goff Field and O'Day Field approved under Article 30 at the 2023 annual town meeting, and to raise an appropriate transfer from available funds in the Treasury, borrow or fund under General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money for improvements at the Elm Street complex, including new fences and protective padding, dugout renovations, walkway repairs, 3 new scoreboards, and related electrical work and other miscellaneous repairs and enhancements, or take any other action relative thereto. Estimated cost, new project $241,000, cancellation of previous authorization of $145,000, net cost of new authorization after cancellation $96,000, and that bothers me a little, but
I
you wanna
will
read
tell
the
you-
motion and then we can discuss it?
I will tell you, I think these should be 2 separate articles, but it's too late for that now.
I don't disagree. We had,
I'm with you.
it's why we generally rescinded funds that weren't spent.
That's right. I think town council's gonna have to take the heat on that one.
Yep.
And explain it to the
Yep.
board.
Cause if we're asked,
I mean,
point
we
at
can't
him.
even- We're not even canceling the other one if town meeting doesn't vote for this.
No, we're not.
Correct.
Which means we have to rescind it.
No,
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
we've canceled projects without going back to town meeting.
Yeah, that's,
We do that all the time.
I
If
didn't
they're
think
cash.
it was necessary to go back to town meeting to cancel the project. To rescind bonding authority,
Yes.
I thought you had to go back
Yes,
to
you
town
do,
meeting.
but not to cancel a cash
Not to
project.
cancel a project.
No. We did it, for example, in the supplemental COVID appropriation. That didn't go back to town meeting.
Didn't we rescind that money at town meeting?
No.
I
No.
think.
I remember
I
speaking
think
about it.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. They said,
We may
look,
have
we spent
mentioned it as part of-
$357 and we're rescinding the rest of it because it never got spent.
We've had
We're closing
several
it out.
articles in the past that specifically rescind and return the money to, I didn't know whether we had to do that or not, but we have done it.
It was above my pay grade.
And we're doing rescinding and then asking at the same time, which may be new, but I guess.
I don't
It- it's new
particularly like that. I think that's gonna create problems, but.
Well, let's assume that if it just said, we are going to ask for 245, at some other place, it would be explained that 145 has already come back without it being in the article, but someone would say, well, I mean, this explains it. If it weren't here, it would be
Or
explained.
confuses it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
but-
think it,
But if you said, if it just said, the article is going in to ask for 241.
I'll
period.
bet you dimes to donuts, somebody's gonna say, so wait a minute, I'm confused. Are we approving 96,000? Are we approving 145? Or are we approving
But
241?
if you just said, we're asking for 241.
I know
and
somebody's
someone
gonna
said,
ask that
"Where's
question."
the 145 we gave him last year?" Well, then you didn't
Well,
explain it.
I do agree that it ought to say, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, or whatever the hell, $241,000.
It does say that.
No, it doesn't.
It does in the motion.
It does.
Go ahead and read the motion.
Expenditure of $145,000. That's where it becomes misleading.
Well, that's just a 2-part motion. I'll read the motion.
Please do.
Okay. that
I
the-
kinda wanted you to before we got
Okay.
into this.
That
for
the
this
town vote
reason.
to cancel authorization for the expenditure of $145,000 for lighting at Miller Field and scoreboard replacements at Goff Field and O'Day Field approved under Article 30 at the 2023 annual town meeting pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund undesignated fund balance the sum of $241,000 for improvements at the Elm Street complex, including new fences and protective padding, dugout renovations, walkway repairs, 3 new scoreboards, and related electrical work and other miscellaneous repairs and enhancements.
And that's why I gave up and says, look, above my pay
And
grade,
it's
you
got
guys
the-
are the
It's got
lawyers,
the
you figure
figures
it out.
right there, and like, you know, this minus that.
But
and
I
that.
think the beginning of this is gonna be confusing for some.
But I agree that motion does cover.
The motion helps.
Yeah.
The rest of it's steaming, but
Yeah.
the motion's good.
In my mind, it says we're authorizing 241,000,
It does in the motion, yeah.
and the cancellation, we never gave them the money in the first place. They haven't got it yet. So how can you?
It's just canceled, right.
Canceling
They
the
never
offer.
took the money.
They could go
You're right.
to, without doing this, they could go to the town and start spending money
Yep.
for the other one from last year
Yes,
too.
they
I
could.
agree with that, but to subtract the 145 from the 241 is not correct. They still need $241 to do the,
Yes, to do the new renovations.
right, so the total cost of the new project is 241,
Yep,
total.
yep.
not
And to
$96.
John Linehan's point, if this fails, they still got $145,000. We haven't canceled it.
We need to
Well,
cancel
Voted
it.
to cancel it.
It's, the
But
account,
town meeting has.
yeah,
Right, we recommended to cancel.
yeah, but we could cancel it. And the town account just put a hold on that account. so
It bristles me because we are known as, and treat ourselves as a recommending board. We don't make decisions on expenditures, we make recommendations on expenditures, which is why I feel very strongly, it's one thing to say, hey, a project is complete and there's $13,000 left, put it back in the proper account. It's another thing to say this project never got off the ground, so we're gonna take that 145 back. They're just two different things in my head. It's where I struggled with this.
I
But
agree,
again-
because people go forth and they leave town meeting, they assume it's gonna happen. And if we never tell them anything to the contrary.
They don't know any different.
But we're telling them here.
The town
We are
meeting
telling
is the deciding authority, not the CPC. We're a recommending board.
I think the presentation has to say, this is a $241,000.
Agreed.
Right, but I think for anybody remote, I mean, you look, the figures are right there in front of you. I mean, you'd have to be intentionally obtuse, which granted people can be. I mean,
This
there
is
it is.
town meeting, my
I
friend.
understand, but how, I don't think you can make it,
Are you
make
serious?
it, how could,
They sure
you
are.
could make it less clearer, because if you took something out, you'd be making another part blurrier. So I'm just saying, I abstained on it before, and I still will, because it's, my
I
son's
think it'd
involved
be a
with this,
heck of a
but.
lot clearer if they were two separate.
I agree, I agree.
Yeah,
Perhaps,
I do
but,
too.
we-
But there aren't.
We did in our dealings with the
Well, it
applicant.
didn't. We can simply rescind it in the fall.
Yes, I agree. Rescinding it isn't a problem.
Nope.
It's, the question is this clear enough? I would say
The motion's pretty clear.
it's pretty clear.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on.
So if you're okay with it as a committee, we're gonna move on to the next one and
There's-
vote them as a
there's the
block.
explanation.
Um,
Project- it says in
Actually,
the last paragraph, the
if I'm
project's-
being fair, we had a member who abstained from this vote, so I think when it comes time for the vote on all of these, make sure you define that you abstained from this one
Okay.
piece.
Which one are you referring to?
Well, I abstained because my son's involved in a Little League thing.
Oh, I
and
thought it was
understand
you.
'cause I was related
No,
to
it was,
Heather.
it was
Hey,
Rich, it was Rich.
And it was Rich who abstained,
Yes.
and
Oh.
Dwight wasn't here.
Oh, okay, well, all
Okay.
right. I
Am
wasn't-
I correct?
I
Because
don't-
we only
I
had
can't
one
tell you that
abstention.
right off the
He
top of my
said,
head.
I didn't
Yeah.
know who, I wasn't.
So I think he missed the meeting
So we
for
both
that vote.
abstained with
No,
two.
you're right, you weren't
I
here.
would
I wasn't
abstain.
here.
It was it was Michael who
I was
wasn't
off
here.
on the sun and-
So where did we get a 7-0 with one abstention?
Actually, I think
Because he's
it's-
related
I
to-
recused
Then what about
myself. I
Dwight?
didn't
He,
abstain.
he
You
voted,
were,
He voted.
yes,
Okay, you voted.
And I abstained or he recused himself?
I
No.
recused myself.
yeah. No, there's only one
I didn't vote
abstention.
abstain, I said.
And it
If
was
Michael
him-
wasn't here, that leaves 8 members.
Okay, so.
That means 7 of us voted
Well, he's
yes,
the
and
abstention.
1
I'm
It
abstained.
should be 6-0-1 because
Right.
he recused himself.
Right, that's my point.
Because I was related
No,
to the proposer.
If Michael wasn't here,
That
for the
leaves
vote.
8,
that leaves 8.
right.
If they both didn't vote, that's 6.
Wait, go back, who says 2 people didn't vote?
I recused myself.
He's
I know Rich
claiming
did,
he-
because I remember
So I
that.
didn't.
So he
no.
didn't vote, so
Correct.
now that's 7.
I
Correct.
didn't vote because I wasn't here.
Right,
But I was here apparently and abstained, I think.
no, you
No?
watched the tape, right, you didn't.
So
you
who
didn't
abstained?
I didn't
Rich.
abstain.
That's what I'm trying to say, you didn't
You're,
abstain.
you're equating recusal and abstaining as the same thing. He either
He
recused,
is,
He may have said he abstained when the vote came along.
He may
No, I
have.
said, I used the word.
I thought he did
Yeah, He
abstain.
did.
I could go back
But
and
there was
watch
only
the
one.
tape,
You watched the tape.
but
because
I can
it was
honestly
just
say
Rich
I'm
who
pretty
abstained.
sure that Rich
yeah, well, I saw it and I
abstained.
thought an abstention, I thought it must be me, but it was
No, it
actually
wasn't
No,
you.
No, it was
I
Rich.
don't know if there's a significant difference
Doesn't matter.
between abstain or.
Well, it
Not true.
matters because we have 9 members, not 10. And you're not here, so that means we had 8 members that voted, so Rich had to abstain. That's the point.
I remember specifically Rich abstaining.
Okay.
I agree with that statement. I know
Does it
that
matter that
Rich
it counted
abstained.
as an abstention rather than an recusal at this point?
7 and 1 makes 8. There was 8 of us here. No, there was 7
But
of
if
us
you
here.
recused, you'd only
Yeah.
have 7,
We didn't have you.
obviously.
Okay,
Right.
but it would be, you're
Right.
saying it should be
Actually,
7-0, not 7-0-1, or what's your
No,
point?
no, 7-0 and
No,
1
I'm-
is fine as long as you voted
Why not?
yes.
Yes, but I'm just asking what point
How do you
Mike's.
count, you're counting the recusal as an abstention.
It's an abstention.
Is that what we intend to do? That's all.
That's what I
I
thought
don't think there's any
happened.
problem with that.
Are they interchangeable words?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you
That's what I mean.
abstained from the
Does
vote.
it matter? If we use it
Usually
interchangeably.
when
And I'll explain why. When this came up, you very forwardly said, hey, I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion. When it came to the vote, you're still a member and are entitled to vote, but you would abstain because you didn't participate materially in the conversation. So the vote makes sense if he recused himself, but he would have still abstained from the vote.
I think if you're gonna report the vote, you say, I don't know, 7 in favor, 1 abstention, 1 recusal. And an absent doesn't have to be.
Right. It
well,
doesn't-
that-
it doesn't
that's
work.
not the numbers though, because we
Yeah.
don't have the, I apparently voted yes. I saw the abstention and thought I'd abstained, but he abstained, so,
What meeting
oh, well,
was
he
this at?
recused
I think the
himself.
horse is dead. Rich abstained, move on.
Let's move
Yeah,
on.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Article 43, Stoughton motel conversion.
To see if the town will raise an appropriate transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow or fund under general law, chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money to support the conversion of the Stoughton motel into 24 single resident studio apartment housing units for homeless individuals or take any other action relative thereto. This was requested by Father Bills and Mainspring Incorporated, inserted by the Select Board on the 6th of February 2024. The estimated cost is $250,000, and I would ask that Barry read the motion before we enter into
Okay,
discussion.
That the town vote pursuant to general law, chapter 44B, the the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund Community Housing Reserve the sum of $250,000 to support the conversion of the Stoughton Motel into 24 single-resident studio apartment housing units for homeless individuals.
This was recommended as a cash article by the Community Preservation Committee with a vote of 4-3 with 1 abstention. 4 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstention. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing nothing, you want to move to the next one, which I think is the last one?
The last one,
Yep.
Bird Street.
Article 44 is the Bird Street Conservation Area Entry Improvements. The article reads, to see if the town will raise an appropriate transfer from available funds in the treasury, borrow or fund pursuant to general law, chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, a sum of money for the design and construction of entry improvements at the Bird Street Conservation Area to include an electronic gate, monitoring camera, utility infrastructure for the gate and camera, signage and fencing, and landscaping and tree work, or to take any other action relative thereto. This was requested by the Conservation Commission and inserted by the Select Board into the 2024 warrant on the 6th of February 2024. The estimated cost is $110,000. Barry, would you read the motion, please?
Proposed motion that the town vote pursuant to general law, chapter 44B, the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate from the Community Preservation Fund undesignated fund, the balance, the sum of $110,000 to fund the design and construction of entryway improvements at the Bird Street Conservation Area to include an electronic gate, monitoring camera, utility infrastructure for the gate and camera, signage and fencing, and landscaping and tree work.
And this was recommended as a cash article by the Community Preservation Committee, and the vote was 8-0. Any questions on this? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept all the motions presented tonight with the exception of the first two?
Okay.
Yeah, with the exception of the first two.
Second.
I
He
need the
needs a
motion,
motion.
I'm sorry.
Richard made the motion,
I think Richard made the
You
motion.
seconded it,
Yeah.
okay. Any discussion on any of the motions? And you know we'll be revisiting both our budget and Hebrew Senior Life at a very near future meeting. Okay, by roll call, Dwight?
Yes.
Yes.
Rich, yes. John Morton?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes.
John Linehan? Larice? Still not getting her. Don Brady?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. I haven't missed anybody.
Okay,
So there's your vote,
7
7-0.
okay. Okay, administrative items, the next thing is to approve the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, so we're all caught up.
Did we?
Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped, yeah, item 10 was an update on the Glen Echo and Atkinson FCRs. I
You
did
can
that in
take
my,
that down.
my administrator's report, so we can skip.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was looking at something else. We covered item 10 during the administrative items, so I think it's okay to pass over item 10. Item 11 is approval of minutes, December 6, 23, and January 3rd, 2024. I was actually just reviewing those minutes to see if I could pick up on what that vote was for, and I, for the life of me, can't find it yet.
Little League?
I figured it'll be in the minutes, who did what. So we recommended rescission of Stoughton Youth baseball grants, with a vote of 8-0. So everybody voted to rescind the money, but I'm having trouble
Would've
finding.
been-
You sure
Meeting
that's
before
not the
that.
meeting that I missed because I
You know,
forgot it?
I
Was
looked
that the
at that
really
meeting.
long
It's the
meeting?
December meeting.
Was that the really long one that went on for hours and hours?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
remember, I forgot, I wasn't in
No,
the
that was,
meeting.
that was.
You were here.
Oh, no, wait, November
This was,
was
this
the
was
long one.
January,
No,
November
okay.
may have been a long, there was one, I
Third.
think that was, I was here, the meeting you missed.
The really long
And
one.
was
That
not
was,
here in
that was
December.
November, and Michael
Okay.
missed the one.
All
in
right, so that
December.
must have been
oh, so
November.
we have December here, we don't have November.
Correct.
Yep, so I won't find it. So do I have a
Like,
motion?
Can I make a motion, we approve both sets of minutes
Mm-hmm.
as written? I didn't
Second.
have any issues, did anybody?
Okay.
There was one thing on, I think, the December,
So I have a second
Hang
from
on.
Dwight.
your other attendees.
This was December 6th?
Okay, let me go
Yeah.
back to it.
You had the guy from Stoughton Youth Baseball listed as being present and on the Zoom.
Oh, really?
Hang on, okay.
Cause I read the name twice.
I don't
I'm like,
look at
wait,
that.
Let me
yeah,
go
I-
back. Hold on, let me get to it.
You look like a microphone. When it comes to you, you get the microphone.
Oh, does it?
That's how
Mike's
the-
a
That's how
microphone.
the owl works.
Mike's a mic.
It needs a wick.
So I moved the microphone.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I just.
All right, I will fix that.
Oh, yeah, Steve Barden.
Good pickup.
Yeah, but you know what? He might have been here both. I remember there was a meeting, he was physically in the room and logged
Same
on.
meeting minutes though, saying he was here and.
Yeah, no, he was both. He had logged on with his phone or a
No,
laptop
there's-
or
there-
something.
No, I see another typo in that same line. Yeah, so that was a cut and paste error on my part.
Okay, so you'll fix that?
I will fix that cut and paste
So the
error.
motion was to approve the minutes.
And I
It
seconded
was
it.
seconded from Dwight. And if we all accept Michael's minor change, I'll take a vote on the minutes. Dwight?
Yes.
Yes.
Rich? John Morton?
Yes.
Michael? John Linehan?
Yes.
Don Brady?
Yes.
Larice?
Yes.
Oh,
There she
we got her.
Did we
And the
make it
chair
out?
votes yes.
Okay, so that was 8-7.
That was both sets of minutes.
Yep, okay. And there's no issues on the January minutes, I take it?
I'm sorry?
There were no issues with the January minutes?
No.
They look good to me.
Any other unanticipated new business or emergency matters to come before the board tonight?
I miss that.
Hearing nothing, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be March 6th, which is a Wednesday. However, again, for everybody's full transparent knowledge, we will be meeting within the next, I hope, 2 weeks to ratify our budget and approve the language of the motion for Hebrew Senior Life. With that said, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
And I got lots of seconds. By roll call,
Aye.
Dwight?
Yes. Rich?
Rich, yes. John Morton? Michael?
Yes.
John Linehan?
Yes.
Don Brady?
Yes.
And Larice?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. I want to thank everybody for watching and attending this evening. Have a wonderful night, and happy Valentine's Day, if that means anything to anybody.